Chapter 164 New Year's Gift 7. Cow and Sheep Heads. After Qian Zhuang heard this, he and Gu Erjiang looked at each other and immediately understood what she meant. They nodded and continued, "Sure. We'll sell the cow and sheep heads in stock. By the way, you two can also keep an eye on the market price of the beef and mutton intestines. If the price is right, sell the ones we have lying around. As for the matter regarding money or taking them from the warehouse, you can look for Manager Sunday. No problem, leave it to us." Qian Zhuang patted his chest and stated. Zhouing did not expect these to be sold out so quickly in 2 days, especially the cow heads. Zhouing even had to instruct Sun Hongliang to leave one for her especially. In the blink of an eye, it was the 28th day of the month. Zhouing gave Sun Hongliang, Tianjiawang, De Hua, and the 2 waiters who didn't stay in the restaurant 5 pounds of beef, the same amount of lamb, a big yellow croaker, a base, and 2 pounds of snacks and dried fruits each. After that, Zhouing calculated that they had made a net profit of 6,668 taels of silver in a month. Thus, she announced, "Everyone, wait a moment. You've all worked hard this month, and it's also the new year. Since the restaurant covers your meals, I won't bother giving you all more food. We'll give you an extra month's salary as a bonus. Everyone, please use this to buy some New Year goods or new clothes." "Thank you, mistress. Thank you so much." Sun Hongliang smiled and bowed. The others immediately echoed this gratitude. Zhouing smiled. "I also wish everyone good health in the new year and a happy life." After that, she gave each of them an extra month's salary. When less than 200 copper coins were left, Zhouing took some extra copper from her purse and put it in a red packet. She handed 100 copper coins each to Li Yu and De Hua. "This is the New Year's money for the 2 of you. Keep it and buy some candy to enjoy the new year." "Thank you, mistress. I wish you great fortune in the next year." Li Yu took it with a smile. "Haha, this blessing is common, but I like it very much." The crowd burst into laughter. "Thank you, Auntie Gu," De Hua said, blushing. "I wish you will get prettier as each year passes." Zhouing was stunned for a moment, as she didn't expect her to say words of blessing. "Auntie Gu loves this blessing too," she said, going up and ruffling her hair. "I also wish my De Hua would grow up to be a beautiful lady." Tianjiawang also laughed when he saw this. His sister was right to send her here, as she finally learned to integrate into her surrounding environment. When Gu Chengrui reached the restaurant at night, they didn't go home. Everyone had a happy early New Year's Eve gathering dinner. Zhouing entrusted the restaurant to Zhao Cheng and Li Sheng the following day. Once that was done, she, Qian Zhuang, and Gu Erjiang delivered the gifts she had prepared to the manor's long-term workers. The gifts for them were different from the others. She prepared 10 pounds of white flour and polished rice, 2 pounds of dried fruits, sugar cubes, desserts, and added 2 pounds of fish for each worker. However, the one prepared for Uncle Nian was different. He had 2 pounds of dried fruits and snacks, a big pork joint, 2 braised fish, a roasted chicken, 2 pounds of 5-spice and spicy dried tofu, and finally, 100 frozen dumplings that were especially left for him yesterday. With these things, he could have a scrumptious new year. After arriving in the village, Zhouing ordered some villagers to slaughter 2 more sheep and distribute the meat to everyone. However, she kept the bones and gave the lamb intestines to Uncle Nian because she heard that the old man was good at making a feast out of them. All the workers were naturally delighted after receiving the gifts, and they finally acknowledged Zhouing as their mistress. This was because Elder Qiao never once prepared New Year's gifts for them. At most, he would order a sheep to be slaughtered for everyone to eat when he was happy. Chapter 165 New Year 1. Amidst a warm farewell, Zhouing and the other 2 left the village. Of course, Qian Zhuang and Gu Hanjiang also had their New Year's gifts, just like Tianjiawang and the others. There was still the cow's head left. After arriving at the village, Zhouing gave the cow's head to the patriarch and got a tael of silver as payment. She had also accepted another job. The patriarch had asked her to prepare 6 types of fried offerings for tomorrow. In the afternoon, Zhouing cleaned the house from inside to outside, and Gu Chengrui rushed back with Zhuang when she was almost done. "Why are you back so early?" Zhouing asked in surprise. "It'll be the 30th tomorrow, so we left early," Gu Chengrui explained and handed her a silver note. This is the bonus from before the new year. Although it's not as much as the restaurant, it's still a decent chuck. Zhouing took it and glanced at it. It was a silver note worth 100 taels. She nodded in agreement. It's quite the sum. By the way, I've been cleaning the whole afternoon, so you can cook dinner. No problem. Let's have noodles and tomato egg soup today. All right, they'll prepare the ingredients for you. Zhouing agreed, and she took out all the ingredients he needed. As soon as she came out of the kitchen, she saw Sister Tian walking in with a basket. I thought you guys should be back, and I prepared some New Year's goods. I brought some over for you because I assumed you didn't prepare anything. Do try out my cooking. She handed the basket to her and turned to leave. Thank you, Sister Tian. Zhouing quickly thanked her. She carried the basket into the kitchen and opened the cloth to take a look. In the middle was a large bowl of meatballs fried with minced meat and steamed buns. There were also cakes wrapped in straw paper, dumplings, and sesame seed goodies. After putting everything in her inner space, she washed the basket and returned it with a big bowl of fried yellow croaker. After dinner, Zhouing and Gu Chungrui chatted for a while, then went to the inner space to cook more. They made a batch of everything fried, such as hemp leaves, small dough sticks, fried peas, and fried pancakes. The next day, Gu Chungrui went to the ancestral hall early in the morning with the fried food. Zhouing tidied up the house and put a big bowl of fried small yellow croaker, 1 whole pork shank, and 2 pounds of 5-spice shredded tofu in a basket. This was the dish they would bring to the Gu family's house tonight. When they were almost done, they went to the ancestral hall. It was packed full of people. The men brought their children to pay respects to their ancestors, while the women set up a shed nearby to cook. This left her a little dumbfounded. As an ex-northerner, she had only heard of these lively ancestral worship ceremonies, but had never seen them in real life. Shengru's wife, come and help us. We would love to try your cooking. Sixth Aunt Gu stood in the shed and waved at her. Oh, hi, I'm coming. Zhouing responded and walked over. She found that there was a lot of food inside, and it was no wonder they were busy here, even with so many people. Oh, you know how to make crispy pork, right? The patriarch always complained that we didn't fry it crispy enough. Sixth Aunt Gu turned her head and asked, Yes. The key is in the flour if you want the crispy pork to be delicious. The meat has to be marinated thoroughly, and the meat has to be tenderized. Zhouing washed her hands and began to get busy. After she marinated the meat, Mrs. Wang quietly walked over and said, Ing, didn't you bring anything when you came? Chapter 166 New Year 2. Bring what? Zhouing turned her head and asked in confusion. Didn't anyone tell you? Please say what you want, as I do not understand what you mean. You mean, Mrs. Wang didn't know what to say when she saw her confused look. After that, she pulled her aside and asked, You know that we need to burn paper money to pay respects to our ancestors, right? You've already separated from your main family and are now independent, so you must prepare some paper money for each ancestor. There's also pork and noodles for the offering. Although they were bought with money from the clan, each family would also prepare some more food when they came. Basically, just some simple cooking or offerings. Zhouing nodded and said, The patriarch told us to prepare some fried goods, so we didn't prepare anything else. However, it's probably too late to buy paper money now. How about this? I still have some paper money left at home, so come with me. No matter what, you need some, said Mrs. Wang. Sure, I'll let Sixth Aunt know. Zhouing agreed, and she went to her. Sixth Aunt, I'm going out for a while. I'll fry the crispy meat when I come back. After that, the two women hurried out. Zhouing quickly cut the paper money while Mrs. Wang helped arrange them. After 15 minutes, they had a stack ready. Mrs. Wang measured the thickness and said, It should be enough, so remember to give it to Chungrui. He'll have to go to the ancestral hall to burn these. Oh right, incense too. Chungrui will need these too. Mrs. Wang said as she turned around, took out a small incense stick from the cabinet drawer, and handed it to her. Let's go. Thank you so much, Auntie, said Zhouing after they went out. Otherwise, we would have made a fool of ourselves today. You can't be blamed for this since no one told you about it. You wouldn't know about this otherwise. Mrs. Wang couldn't help but ridicule Madame Chiao and the others at this time. How could those elders not tell the younger generation about such an important thing? What an irresponsible bunch. She didn't know Madame Chiao and the others had long forgotten this rule. When they were in the capital, they only returned with gifts yearly and had never participated in ancestral worship. Paying respects to their ancestors in the capital was a simplified process. The servants had prepared those during the New Year and festivals, and the masters were there just for formality. So they always assumed it was the same over here as well. Father Gu and second Uncle Gu were stuck in a rut when the two women returned. The patriarch was going around and exchanging the things they needed and asking the other clan members to give them a portion if they had any extra. Just as Gu Chungrui was thinking of asking someone else for some, Zhouing walked to his side. Crazy, right? These are for you. Later on, watch what others do and quickly learn. Don't make a fool of ourselves again. Gu Chungrui saw the items in her hands and almost kissed her on the spot. He took it and exclaimed excitedly, "You really are my savior. All right, I can't be here anymore. I have to go and cook." After Zhouing clenched her fist to cheer him on, she turned around and returned to the shed to help with the cooking. The main dishes were crispy meat and stir-fried vegetables, most of which were almost finished. Just as she was about to start cooking, she suddenly heard a series of shouts, followed by a commotion. Since she couldn't enter the ancestral hall, she couldn't be bothered to go over. Instead, she continued her cooking. When it was time to eat, she was dumbfounded again. After cooking all this time, no woman was allowed at the table, and they could only hide in the shed and eat. Also, they could only eat steamed buns with vegetables, which was frustrating to her. This also reminded her of the status of men and women in this society. No wonder Mrs. Liu didn't dare say anything to Father Gu, no matter how arrogant she was. Chapter 167 New Year 3. After the meal, Zhouing went out to look for Gu Chungrui after helping to clean up the mess. She didn't expect to be surrounded by so many people. Some were complimenting him, while others were trying to please him, almost treating him like an emperor. Gu Chungrui was trying his best to deal with them, so his eyes lit up brightly when he saw her coming toward him. He immediately stood up and said, "Uncles and brothers, please excuse me. I still have things to do at home, so let's talk another day." After that, he bowed, cupped his hands, and then hurriedly walked to Zhouing. The crowd looked at him, immediately laughed, and began teasing the two. However, the couple pretended not to hear them and quickly rushed home. When they arrived home, Zhouing looked at him, rubbing his cheeks, and asked curiously, "Really? So happy until your face is stiff from all that smiling?" "It's just a fake smile." Gu Chungrui was speechless. "What happened? Do you know that every household will burn incense? I heard an aunt mention it, but I don't understand the customs. I only found out after the event. Whoever's incense burned the brightest would have a better year." At this time, Zhouing remembered the exclamations she had heard while cooking. "So, our incense burned the brightest?" "That's right, a bright and strong flame. That's why they've been pestering me, saying that if there's any more way I have to earn money next year, we'll have to bring them along." "What an old way of thinking." Zhouing shook her head. "But if they come to you again, you can tell them to plant more chilies and vegetables to provide for our restaurant," she added. "That's fine. Otherwise, I'm afraid they wouldn't let us go this easily." Gu Chungrui nodded in agreement. Right now, the chilies they were using mainly came from her inner space. This wasn't a long-term solution, and this matter needed to be dealt with sooner or later. Afterwards, Zhouing turned on the fire and cooked for Erzhuang. She boiled a pot of water and made a pot of chrysanthemum tea for the two of them, and they rested before carrying the things they had prepared to the Gu manor. Gu Chengxi, waiting at the door, saw them and immediately came forward to greet them. "Chungrui, third sister-in-law, I knew you would be here soon." Then, two little girls ran over and greeted sweetly, "Third brother, third sister-in-law." Zhouing regretted that she had forgotten to prepare some snacks, so she had to use the basket as a cover to grab a large number of fruit candies from her inner space and divide them. "Don't eat it all at once, or you'll have a toothache." "Thank you, third sister-in-law." The two girls immediately ran in with a smile after getting the candy. "Third sister-in-law, it'll help you carry the basket," Gu Chengxi said as he took the basket. "No need. I'm going to the kitchen, so we'll need these later." Zhouing shook her head. "Let's go in and check how much you've learned." Gu Chungrui put his arm around Gu Chinx's shoulder and walked in. Ah, Chungrui, maybe not during the new year. Gu Qingxi immediately wailed. Seeing this, Zhouing shook her head and went to the kitchen with her basket. She saw Mrs. Gua and Mrs. Sun busy inside and Gu Ziqiang sitting in front of the stove, quietly stoking the fire. Aunt Gua, Aunt Sun, Happy New Year, sick sister, she greeted. Nice, you were here. Oh, you shouldn't have brought more food. There's really no need, Madame Sun enthusiastically replied. She knew that the couple had been secretly helping her son, Chengxi. Otherwise, Chengxi wouldn't have been able to eat his fill at home. It's nothing much, just 2 dishes. You guys can arrange it as you see fit, Zhouing said as she handed her the basket and told her what to do with it. Is there anything else I can help you all with? She asked. Chapter 168 New Year 4. Not really. You can go inside and chat with them, as just us being here will be enough. Mrs. Gua turned her head and spoke with a smile. Zhou Ying's status was different from before. Mrs. Gua might need to ask her for assistance in the future, so she couldn't order her around like before. Yes, don't worry about it. If there are too many people here, it will hinder our movement anyway. Mrs. Sun quickly echoed. All right, if you need anything, just call me. Zhouing reminded them as she turned around and walked back to the living room. Ing, you're here. Come and sit with Grandma. As soon as Madame Chiao saw her come in, she immediately waved her hands. Zhouing paused and sat next to Madame Chiao after greeting several other elders. She looked at the dark green top she was wearing and said, Grandma, you look lovely in this color. Really? I do quite like this color, and it's all thanks to you. When Madame Chiao said this, she sized her up and asked, Why aren't you wearing any new clothes during the new year? I'm wearing new clothes too. As for my New Year's clothes, I'm planning to wear them tomorrow, which is the actual day of the new year. She explained as she drew her burgundy cloak. That's lovely. You're still young, so you should make more clothes to wear when you have the money. Otherwise, you'll look like a bucket no matter what you wear when you're old and out of shape. You won't look good in them then. They'll do as you advise then. By the way, you've been married for more than 3 months. Are there any movements in your body? Her question stumped Zhouing. She quickly realized what she meant when she saw Madame Chiao's eyes staring at her stomach. There's no hurry. We're still young and want to save up some money, so we'll wait until things have completely stabilized before trying for one, she said, smiling. That's true. You wake up early and sleep late at night daily, so it's not suitable for you to have one now. However, you have to do it while you're still young. It'll be hard for you to have children when you're older. They'll take that to heart, Grandma. Zhouing nodded. Mrs. Liu sneered as she ate melon seeds while looking at them happily chatting, especially at Madame Chiao. How could she not know that this old hag disliked the poor and favored the rich? If Madame Chiao had treated Zhouing like this back then, their family would be the ones getting wealthy. However, since her son and her husband had repeatedly warned her, she only treated them as background noise and continued eating her melon seeds. When Mrs. Yao saw this, she was happy about Mrs. Liu's loss, but also didn't want to offend Zhouing again. Thus, she was happy enough to watch the drama between them. Father Gu, second Uncle Gu, and Gu Chengji were all reserved and quiet on the men's side. Only Gu Chengye and Gu Chengxi kept Gu Chengrui company and chatted with him about all kinds of topics, from mathematics to food. Gu Chengxi thought of hot pot and smiled awkwardly. Chengrui, I haven't eaten hot pot before. When are you going to treat me to a meal? Father did say it's delicious. I heard good things, especially about the tripe. I heard it's numbing, spicy, chewy, and that anyone who eats it will want to eat more. Ahem. Second Uncle Gu coughed and quipped, If you want to eat it, just say you want to eat it. Don't drag me into the conversation. Gu Chengxi secretly pouted. He had been taught to be honest, but in the end, the person who taught him didn't do the same. The hypocrisy. Seeing this, Gu Chengrui smirked internally and said, There's no problem if you want to eat a hot pot. How about we have lunch there tomorrow afternoon? Really? Gu Chengxi was overjoyed. Then, as if afraid Gu Chengrui would regret his decision, he quickly turned his head to his father. Father, they'll go to third brother's house for lunch tomorrow. You don't have to wait for me for lunch. Go, but don't cause trouble, understand? Second Uncle Gu said it through gritted teeth. At the same time, he cursed inwardly, this little heartless brat. He isn't even going to suggest bringing his father along with him for such a good opportunity. Chapter 169 New Year, 5 Soon. Dinner was ready. Zhouing got up and helped to set the table. After the meal was served, they were divided into 2 tables, as usual, men and women. After the dishes were served, Madame Chow instantly recognized the dishes Zhouing had brought and then said to Mrs. Yao on the side, "Give me some of each of the 3 dishes Zhouing had brought. I want to see if her cooking has improved." "All right, just sit tight." Mrs. Yao stood up and handed her a portion of each dish. Of course, she also gave her and her daughter-in-law a portion. When everyone saw this, they immediately took some too. It was mainly because Mrs. Gua and Mrs. Sun's dishes were ordinary, and everyone had long been tired of eating them. When they saw a more delicious option, they naturally didn't hesitate. Zhouing didn't join in the fun, but ate the other dishes. Of course, another person did not participate in the snatching. It was the pregnant Mrs. Yang. However, she had a mother-in-law to serve her, making her attitude high and mighty. It was as if she were no different from their previous lives. It was the same for the men's table, with Zhou Ying's food finishing the fastest. Zhou Qingya picked up the last bit of yellow croaker and said, "Cheng Rue is sure blessed. Sister-in-law's dishes are getting better and better." "Yes, it's better than the meal we had at noon." Second Uncle Gu nodded in agreement. To be honest, whether it's delicious or not is mostly due to the seasoning. The seasoning for lunch is simple, but these dishes are made in a restaurant with enough prep. Gu Chengrue said so proudly. How could he not be proud? His wife started cooking when she was 8 years old and could make all kinds of dishes. Maybe some dishes weren't as good as those prepared by professional chefs, as she hadn't obtained authentic recipes, but her skills were definitely at the level of a chef. Everyone was speechless after looking at his smug expression as they remembered his cold attitude towards her before. They hadn't expected that his attitude would take a turn after a few months. If they weren't sure that he hadn't been replaced, they would have thought he was entirely someone else. They didn't know they had found the truth, but this truth was completely buried in the ground. Among them, Gu Qingji was the one with the most mixed feelings. Honestly, he had looked down on the couple before, especially regarding status. He was the son of his father's first wife, and his wife was the daughter of a government official. They were the best in the family. On the other hand, one of them was an illegitimate son who had lost his biological mother, while the other was an illegitimate daughter the family completely ignored. They were born with statues that were worlds apart. But in the end, Gu Qingji had to work hard daily to earn just 20 copper coins to support the family, while his wife stayed home to take care of the baby. As for the other couple, one was a respected doctor, and the other was raking in money. They were thriving and completely different from before. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but look at his wife, Mrs. Yang. As expected, she still looked aloof from the reality they were in. Gu Qingji thought about the child in her stomach, and he suddenly had a headache. He couldn't afford to have a child with just 20 copper coins daily, and he had to think of a way to start a business. Cheng Rue, do you have any plans after the new year? Father Gu asked. You mean in that aspect? It's the thing that the clan members mentioned about bringing everyone along to do. This can be big or small, but you must handle it well. Yes, yes. Even if you refuse, you have to be tactful about doing it. Otherwise, you will offend the others. Second Uncle Gu chimed in. Gu Chengji and Gu Chengya, originally unconcerned about their conversation, immediately perked up their ears and listened. Ing and I have already thought about this. Oh, how do you guys plan to solve this? Father Gu asked curiously. At the same time, he was also looking forward to their idea, hoping it would be useful to him. Chapter 170 New Year, 6. You've heard of the plant, chili? It's the main ingredient for hot pot. Gu Chengrue asked. I know. It's the red and spicy one. Second Uncle Gu nodded. Yes, we don't produce chili in this area, so it's 30% more expensive to import. So we were going to propose that they plant it and we'd supply the seeds. There are also various kinds of vegetables we need. If anyone can grow them, the restaurant will buy from them. Gu Chengrue replied. Farming, huh? Second Uncle Gu lost interest when he heard this. Cheng-Rui, do you know about the production quantity of chili? Gu Qingji asked curiously. He couldn't leave for an outstation trip for a year or two because his wife was pregnant. He could try it out if the income from planting chili were good. I'm not sure about the details, but I heard it's more cost-effective than growing normal grains and vegetables, and they don't need particularly fertile land. Gu Qingrui replied vaguely. He only knew that chili in both the inner space and modern times was considered a high-yield crop, but he couldn't be sure since he had never planted it in these ancient times. I've seen them before, and the output should not be low. When it ripens, the plant will be so filled with red chilies that you can't even see its leaves. The main point is that it can be planted in mountains or sand, so I think it's relatively drought-resistant. That sounds good, Second Uncle Gu said. Yup, if it's successful, it'll be much better than planting a single crop. Father Gu nodded. How many seeds do you have? Is it enough for everyone? He asked. Yes. We peeled half of the seeds from the chili we bought earlier to plant them ourselves. Gu Qingrui paused and continued. But I don't suggest destroying the grain crop you have planted. After all, they are something to fill your stomach with, and that's much more important. The problem is that we can't say for sure what the yield will be after planting it, so we recommend using the vegetable garden or some extra land to plant it as a trial. If it's successful, they'll give more seeds next year. You're right. Don't go making empty promises and decisions for others. Father Gu nodded in agreement. He felt gratified and sad at the same time. He was glad that he had matured and was more tactful in his words and actions. He was no longer as stubborn as he used to be. The unfortunate thing was that he was forced to mature, which caused him to lose his good relationship with them. After the meal, they sat down and chatted for a while. When Madame Chow was tired, the young couple took their baskets and went home. Gu Qingji and his wife returned to their bedroom, and he told Mrs. Yang about planting chili. Darling, I think this is feasible. Let's buy 2 acres of barren land and try it. Barren land? But that means we have to plow it up, right? You do know we don't have any servants now, and I can't do any work. Besides, you're doing a good job in the workshop. How will you have the time for this? If this doesn't work and you lose the workshop job, what will we do in the future? Mrs. Yang said in disagreement. After hearing this, Gu Qingji hesitated momentarily and said, I don't want to do the job at the workshop anymore. It's tiring and only earns me a little. Now that the Chow family is gone, I want to take a gamble. Otherwise, our lives will be stagnant like this forever. Mrs. Yang fell silent upon hearing this. To be honest, she had had enough of this kind of life where she could neither eat her fill nor starve to death. However, the husband and wife had never suffered before, let alone farming. She hesitated for a moment. I think Uncle and Father will decide on this matter soon. Let's see what the family will do before we decide if we want to go on ourselves. Chapter 171 New Year, 7. All right, let's see what happens then. Gu Qingji nodded. Father Gu and Second Uncle Gu, who were on night duty in the main hall, also discussed this. However, their family only had 100 acres of land, and all of it was planted with wheat, so there was no more land to grow chili. In the end, Father Gu said, if we really can't do it, let's see if anyone has land to sell. If not, we can buy some barren land to plant vegetables, as we can't keep buying them with our current income. That's true. Since there's no tax for the next 5 years, we can try it. If this chili thing doesn't work out, we'll turn it into a vegetable garden. Second Uncle Gu nodded in agreement. At that time, Mrs. Yao couldn't bear to listen anymore. The men only thought about how they could earn money by farming, but why didn't they think about whether they knew how to farm or not? At the thought of this, she asked, Brother, darling, you're both thinking about farming, but which one of you knows how to farm? You've never even watered the flowers. Yeah, no matter how high the income from farming is, there's a limit. If we were to hire workers, we might as well not farm. Mrs. Liu echoed. Who would know how to do anything when they were born? You didn't know how to grow bean sprouts before, but you've learned it now. Second Uncle Gu said indignantly. Speaking of bean sprouts, fewer people are selling them now. We can try that out. Father Gu added. That's because there are no more cheap beans. The green beans in the grain shop have grown to 7 coppers per pound now. Mrs. Liu mentioned. 1 pound of beans grows to about 10 pounds of bean sprouts. We won't lose money no matter what, as there will be no more vegetables for sale after the new year. This will be a good opportunity. Father Gu insisted. Let's try it then. We can sell them for at least 1 or 2 months before the vegetables grow. Second Uncle Gu nodded in agreement. You're not buying a boat? Mrs. Yao saw that they were hard-bent on farming and hurriedly asked, You have the silver for that? Second Uncle Gu retorted in a bad mood. Father Gu replied, Let's forget about buying a boat for now. Let's see if we can rent one after the river opens. On the other end, Gu Chengrui and Zhouing returned home and gave Er Zhuang a pot of pork ribs to enjoy the new year. The two of them took a bath and changed into new clothes the next morning before going out to make their New Year's visits. The first place they went was their old home. Later, Gu Chengrui and the other 4 brothers went for New Year's greetings. Zhou Ying went to the patriarch's home with Mrs. Liu and Mrs. Yao. The group went out, and after a round of visits, she felt her knees trembling. She hadn't expected she would have to kowtow in New Year's greetings. If she had known, she would have changed into thick cotton pants. After they visited the entire village, the village women gathered together to gossip. Finally, Ninth Aunt Gu looked at Mrs. Liu and asked, Sister, your son Xingye is turning 18 this year. What kind of girl are you looking for? Do you need our help to find one? Ah, her standards are high, so it's impossible for her to take a liking to your niece. Don't bother asking. At this point, Sixth Aunt Gu spoke. What's wrong with my niece? Why can't she make the cut? Ninth Aunt Gu looked at her question. Does your niece know how to read? Gu Qingye used to be a scholar, so no matter how low his standards are, he would never find a girl who couldn't read. Sixth Aunt Gu responded by turning her head. Ninth Aunt Gu was angry after hearing this and wanted to hit her. Mrs. Wang saw this and immediately stepped forward and stopped her. It's the new year. Let's not get angry and hurt each other's feelings. After saying that, she glared at Sixth Aunt Gu. You two, why do you have such a foul mouth? His mother hasn't even said anything yet, and here you are answering for her. I stopped her because I was afraid she would embarrass herself. Sixth Aunt Gu mumbled, frustrated. You're still talking. Mrs. Wang glared at her. Well, it's getting late. Let's go home and cook for our families. Mrs. Liu said with a dry smile. Chapter 172 New Year, 8. Yes, yes. We'll talk another day when we're free. Mrs. Yao echoed and immediately followed Mrs. Liu. Zhouing took this opportunity to leave, but didn't go with them. Instead, she returned to her own home to prepare a hot pot. She didn't forget Gu Chengrui said that Gu Chengxi would come for a hot pot meal today. So she got busy after she got home. She prepared some other dishes and knew Gu Chengxi needed to eat more. So she cooked 2 bags of rice noodles. When it was almost noon, she prepared a pot of charcoal. However, there was no copper pot at their home, so she had to use a small iron pot instead. On the other hand, Gu Chengrui couldn't leave as easily as she did. His clan surrounded him, and he had to explain chili and vegetable planting to them. It wasn't until the smell of rice came from the patriarch's house that they took their leave. After he came out, Gu Qingxi immediately chased after him. Hi, third brother. Let's go. I didn't forget you. Gu Chengrui smiled and rubbed his head. He then looked at Gu Chengji and Gu Chengya and said, Why don't you two come together? Gu Chengji and Gu Chengya looked at each other and shook their heads, and they could tell he was just being polite. Besides, Zhouing wouldn't be able to sit at the table if they were all there, making them rude guests. All right, another day then, Gu Chengrui said as he brought Gu Chengxi home. He smelled a spicy fragrance wafting over him as soon as he entered the courtyard. Chengxi sniffed and exclaimed, It smells so good. No wonder the business of Grassland Taste Restaurant is so good. Come on, you glutton. Gu Chengrui brought him into the house after that. It just so happened that Zhouing was almost done preparing. The 3 washed their hands and began to eat. Zhouing looked at Gu Cheng, who liked spicy food so much that he kept eating faster even though he struggled with the spice. She smiled and handed him a cup of herbal tea. If it's too spicy, it'll be much better if you use the chopsticks to force the spicy soup out of the ingredients. Gu Qingxi nodded repeatedly. I know, third sister-in-law, but the mutton is just too delicious. not gamey yet tender. Also, the noodles are just splendid, chewy, and al dente. The couple saw that he was eating happily and didn't try to dissuade him anymore. Instead, they tried their best to feed him. After he was full, the couple started eating. Once lunch was over, Zhouing was afraid that his throat couldn't withstand the spice, so she made him a pot of chrysanthemum tea with rock sugar. In the afternoon, the two brothers spent some time playing chess while Zhouing wrapped and froze some dumplings. Gu Qingxi didn't eat there that night. When he left, Zhouing gave him the remaining hot pot base and some dipping sauce for him to bring back. Fortunately, the people at the old mansion hadn't finished up their mutton, so everyone had a taste of the hot pot with vegetables and steamed buns. The next day was traditionally a day for the daughter to return to her mother's house. However, the woman who had married into the Gu family couldn't go back, and there wasn't anyone else coming over. Thus, the couple finally had a good night's sleep. They only got up when Erzhuang was hungry and kept barking. After breakfast, they heard a burst of laughter from next door. The couple was startled, knowing Sister Tian didn't laugh like this. Could they have guests over? Just as they were filled with curiosity, they saw Sister Tian sending a person dressed as a matchmaker past their house. It seems that Brother Tian's time has come. Zhouing paused for a moment and mentioned, "Indeed, it's about time. Brother Tian is a good and capable person. Now that he has a stable income, finding a suitable partner in the village wouldn't be difficult. Just watch. There will be lots of people coming to visit them over the next few days." Gu Chengrui replied with a smile. Chapter 173 Gu Zi. After lunch, the couple wanted to take Erzhuang for a walk in the mountains. Just as they were about to leave, Mrs. Wang brought a haggard-looking but well-dressed young woman to their doors. Zhouing was stunned but still greeted her. "Hello, Auntie. Please come in." She invited them into the house. Gu Chengrui had no choice but to tie Erzhuang back to his post and head to the kitchen to boil some water, which caused Erzhuang to bark sadly. After they returned to the living room and sat down, Mrs. Wang introduced them to each other. Zhouing only realized that the young woman was Mrs. Wang's eldest daughter, Gu Zi. She quickly pushed some dried fruits she had prepared to them and said, "Oh, big sister, it's you. When did you come back?" "Just this morning. We've come to find Chengrui and request that he do a checkup for her." When Madame Wang saw that Gu Chengrui wasn't around, she couldn't help but ask, "Does Chengrui have something to do? He's most likely in the kitchen boiling some water. Wait a moment while I'll take his place." After Zhouing finished speaking, she got up and walked out. When she reached the kitchen, she saw that Gu Chengrui had filled a pot with water and was about to light the fire. She quickly went forward to stop him. "That young woman is your eldest uncle's daughter, Gu Zi. She's here as a patient today, so you'd better go and take a look while I make tea." "I'll go over then." Before entering the living room, Gu Chengrui took a ladle of warm water from the stovepat and placed it in a basin. After he left, Zhouing entered her interspace and made a pot of boiling water with her electric kettle. She used this boiled water to make a pot of Longjing tea and returned to the living room. After pouring a cup of tea for everyone, Zhouing sat next to Mrs. Wang and waited with her for the results. After a few minutes, Gu Chengrui stopped and looked at Gu Zi thoughtfully. "Big sister, when did you feel you were not feeling well?" "About 3 months ago, but I can't remember the exact time. My problem was confirmed 2 months ago, as I visited a few doctors. They all said it was anemia, and no serious illness was diagnosed." Gu Zi frowned and replied. She continued, "Have you found out the reason for my sickness?" Gu Chengrui replied, "If I'm not wrong, you've been poisoned by a slow-acting poison. However, I'm not knowledgeable enough to confirm what kind of poison it is." "What? Poisoned?" Mrs. Wang stood up in shock and looked at Gu Zi, asking, "Is anyone bullying you? Who wants to harm you? Tell me, and Mother will tear them apart." "Mother, let's go back." Gu Zi was stunned before smiling bitterly. She went forward to help her mother up to leave. Gu Chengrui looked at her forbearing expression and knew she had something on her mind. She probably knew what was going on, but it was obvious that she didn't want to be treated, so he persuaded her, "Big sister, if you don't get treatment in time, I'm afraid you won't live for more than 3 months. You have to think about your children, too. What? 3 months? Mrs. Wang's legs went limp, and she looked at Gu Chungrui in shock. She staggered, pounced on him to grab his arm, and begged, Chungrui, can you cure her? Gu Chungrui quickly helped her to sit down, but before he could speak, Gu Zi stated, Mother, there's no need for that, and let's go back. Don't make things difficult for Chungrui. You stupid girl, do you know something? Tell me, and Mother will make the decision for you. Mrs. Wang looked at her unworried appearance and demanded angrily. No, Mother. Gu Zi hesitated. Seeing this, Gu Chungrui was certain that this wouldn't be a simple matter. He could only say, Big sister, would you be willing to leave a few drops of your blood here? They'll try to test to see if I can find out what kind of poison it is. Chapter 174, Waiting for the results. Of course, we will give you the blood. Your elder sister just turned 25, and she's in the prime of her life. She can't just die like this. Mrs. Wang firmly nodded. After that, she dragged her daughter to Gu Chungrui. Seeing this, Gu Zi did not dispute further. Gu Chungrui immediately turned around and went to the west room. He took out a small porcelain bottle and a small blade to take 3 drops of blood from her finger. We'll try to find out what poison it is as soon as possible. All right, thank you. They'll leave now and wait for your news. Let us know as soon as you have any results. Mrs. Wang turned to leave. Mother, let's go. Gu Zi turned around and walked out with Mrs. Wang after saying their goodbyes. Zhouing saw they had something on their minds and didn't ask them to stay. Instead, she sent them out and placed Gu Chungrui in her interspace after returning to the house. She then brought Erzhuang up the mountain. Although the mountain was pretty barren and desolate, it shone a lovely golden color under the sun. Sparrows chirping could be heard from time to time, painting a picture full of vitality. When she and her dog arrived at the Mother God temple halfway up the mountain, Zhouing immediately remembered her previous nightmares. She walked in and looked at the shabby Mother God temple. She wet the ground with water and took a broom to cleaning up the cobwebs near the Mother God statue too. However, she didn't dare to touch the Mother God statue, as she was afraid she would break it into pieces if she did. Finally, she kept her cleaning tools in her interspace and bowed deeply 3 times before leaving the Mother God temple. She took Erzhuang for another walk around the area, and finally, the two reached a river. Through the thin layer of ice, she could see that there were still plenty of large fish in the river. She suddenly got playful and made Erzhuang step back. She then lifted a large rock and threw it into the river. Sure enough, the ice layer broke. The fish inside immediately leaped through the hole, and Zhouing was shocked to find that some of the big fish looked heavier than 5 pounds. However, after a few big fish lashed their tails around, the ice around them broke. The fish fell back into the river and swam away. But more and more fish were jumping out of the hole, big and small. Woof woof. Erzhuang suddenly rushed out, which startled Zhouing. She quickly shouted, Erzhuang, come back. However, Erzhuang had already rushed in. Perhaps it was due to its light body and quick speed, but it didn't break the fine ice layer and brought back a large fish weighing about 3 pounds. When Erzhuang returned, it brought the fish to her feet and barked twice, wagging its tail and demanding praise. Zhouing patted its head. You're not allowed to go in again. Otherwise, you won't be having dinner tonight. She had all kinds of fish in her inner space, so she didn't want Erzhuang to lose his life because of some fish. I never knew that you had such a mischievous side. Qian Zhuang's voice sounded as he came down from the mountain, followed by Gu Erjiang, carrying a hatchet. It's the new year, and you two are going up the mountain to chop firewood? Zhouing looked at the hatchet in their hands and asked. Yeah, there hasn't been enough firewood since the new year. So, I've been staying at Brother Qian's house. Otherwise, I'd freeze to death. Gu Erjiang laughed dryly. You just had to be lazy, didn't you? You would have been frozen to death, so let's see if you'll still be this lazy next time. Also, take the fish. Zhouing continued. Take this for another dish for tonight's dinner. After that, she led Erzhuang down the mountain. Otherwise, ugly rumors might spread if someone else saw them together on the mountain. On the other hand, Qian Zhuang and Gu Hanjiang had their eyes on the fish. As soon as Zhouing returned to the village, she saw Tiniu and the other children playing a game of catch. Their happy voices lingered around the village for a long time. Thinking about her own childhood, she couldn't help but feel envious. At the same time, she silently promised to give her future child a happy childhood. Chapter 175 disapproved when she thought of her future child. She also remembered the child's father, Gu Chengrui. She realized he was still in her interspace and wondered how the test was going. She rushed home, tied Zhuang up, and entered her interspace after locking up. She saw Gu Chengrui coming down from the laboratory on the second floor and quickly asked, "How is it? Did you find out what poison it is?" "No. I can only confirm that the effect of this poison is similar to that of opium. They both ruin the body and corrode nerves. I must go to Dr. Luo to see if he knows what it is. Also, don't wait for me tonight. I'll just stay over in the clinic or our restaurant." "That's fine. You should go early then," Zhouing said as she took him out of her interspace. Gu Chengrui left with his first aid kit, while Zhouing returned to her interspace and started making clothes for the next spring and summer. After all, she wouldn't have the time when they opened for business soon. On the other hand, Chunhong had just returned from Gu Zixin's place, who was Gu Qingye's biological sister. When she heard that her mother, Widow Hua, was looking for a matchmaker to match her and Tian Jiawang, she immediately rushed in. "Mother, if you want to marry him, you can do it yourself. I don't want to marry a man whose wife died." "How can you say that? This isn't what I taught you." Widow Hua angrily scolded her. She glared at her, signaling for her to restrain herself. However, Chunhong didn't want to marry Tian Jiawang, so she continued, "It's true, and it's not like I can't get married. Why should I marry someone whose wife died? What if he's a jinx? Aren't you afraid that he'll die?" "You." As Widow Hua was about to say something, the matchmaker immediately smiled and said, I think we should just forget about this. Mr. Tian has no shortage of attractive women pursuing him." After saying that, she glanced at Chunhong with a sneer and hurriedly left. "Hey sister, don't go." Seeing this, Widow Hua knew this was bad and immediately wanted to chase after her. Chunhong immediately stopped her. "Mother, why are you chasing after her? I already said I don't want to marry Tian Jiawang." "You shut up. Do you know why I haven't remarried in many years and have worked hard to maintain a good reputation? I want to leave a nice impression on us and find you a good family to marry into. But look at you. Do you know that your reputation has been ruined just because of those words you said? If she were to spread those around, how would you find a husband in the future?" At this point, Widow Hua's face grew stern. "You're not allowed to go near the Gu family anymore." Based on Mrs. Liu's difficult personality, I won't let you marry into their family. I'm marrying brother Chengya, not Mrs. Liu. Don't you know what happened to Zhouing? That's because she isn't Mrs. Liu's real daughter-in-law. Besides, I'm not like Zhouing, that pushy, meek girl. You. If she doesn't like you, it'll be easier for her to bully you as your real mother-in-law. Besides, Gu Chengya doesn't have anything. He's judged guilty by the emperor's court, so what's good about that? At this point, Widow Hua paused for a moment before she patiently advised, "Tan Jiawang is different. He now has a stable job and no in-laws or children. You can hold the reins of the family once you marry him. It'll help you in the future, and you'll have a good life." Chunhong glared at her after hearing her belittle Gu Chengya and asked, "Did the widow of the Tian family ask about me? I knew nothing good would come out of her visits, and you better lessen your contact with her in the future." Widow Hua saw that her daughter still hadn't listened to a single word she said and got anxious. She directly ordered, "You're rebelling against me? No matter what, I won't allow you to marry Gu Chengya." Chapter 176 A Ski. I want marry Tian Jiawang no matter what. You can marry him if you dare agree on my behalf, as I don't want to be poor for the rest of my life. Chunhong straightened her neck and replied. When she was working in the manor, she saw what the most important thing in village life was. It was land, which was the foundation of not having to worry about food and drink. Therefore, Gu Chengji, who was talented, good-looking, and had a lot of lands, fit her requirements the best. As for Tian Jiawang, although he had a job and no parents or children, he looked like a bear. He still had 3 worthless family members to raise. At most, she wouldn't have to worry about food and drink. She would probably have to save up for a long time if she wanted to buy a decent piece of clothing, which was why she didn't want to marry him. In her days, she did not notice Widow Hua's face darkening, and her eyes were disappointed. Then, she slapped her daughter's face. "It seems like I've spoiled you too much. You." Chun Hong covered her face, burning from the slap, and looked at Widow Hua in disbelief. She roared aggrievedly, "You're simply being unreasonable." After that, she turned around and ran out. "Come back here." Widow Hua quickly chased after her. Not only did Chun Hong not return, but she ran faster and faster. Finally, she rushed into the Tian family's house and roared at Sister Tian, who was in a daze. "You should give up. I will never marry into your family, even if I die." After that, she turned around and ran up the mountain. Sister Tian was stunned and confused. What was she talking about? However, she soon remembered that her best friend, Widow Hua, had asked her what she thought of Chun Hong. To be honest, she didn't like Chun Hong's arrogant personality, but for her friend's sake, she only nodded and praised her daughter. She hadn't expected. She ran after her immediately, but her heart skipped a beat when she saw her running up the mountain. She was afraid that something would happen to Chun Hong, and she couldn't explain it to her friend. Thus, she had no choice but to turn and run to Widow Hua's house. She had no idea she had run into Widow Hua when she turned into an alley she had to pass through. She quickly pulled onto her and urged. Chun Hong ran up the mountain. "What? That wretched girl is getting more and more disobedient." At this point, Widow Hua wanted to ask Sister Tian to help chase after her daughter. However, when she thought about how Chun Hong rejected her, she immediately swallowed the words on the tip of her tongue. She just thanked Sister Tian and ran up the mountain. Sister Tian shook her head when she saw this. At the same time, she was glad that Chun Hong did not agree to the marriage, or she might have harmed her brother. Chun Hong's rebellious situation also reminded her that she shouldn't spoil her daughter too much, or it would be troublesome in the future. After Chun Hong ran into the mountains, she didn't walk far before she met Gu Chengji and Gu Chengya. When she saw the 2 brothers checking out the mountain, her eyes flashed, and she had an idea. She quietly walked over and stopped about 100 feet away from them. She deliberately twisted her foot and shouted, "Oh, help!" She shouted a few more times just in case they couldn't hear her. The Gu brothers, busy digging through the soil, paused when they heard the shouts. They looked at each other and ran up the mountain, where they saw Chun Hong struggling to get up. The 2 brothers looked at each other, but neither stepped forward. This was because they had seen too many conspiracies and schemes for marriage in the capital. Chun Hong had been trying to get close to Gu Chengya all this time, but the Gu family didn't want her. So, both brothers felt this was probably another trick of hers, trying to take advantage of an opportunity to cling to Gu Chengya. Chapter 177, Exposing Her. Chun Hong wanted to cry at that moment. She tried to fake a twisted ankle, so she gently tilted her foot. She didn't expect that she would twist it too much, and her entire ankle swelled up in an instant. She was in such pain that she didn't care about her schemes anymore. She yelled for help and cried for real at the same time. "This seems to be real," Gu Chengya said as he listened to her anguished cries. "Then go find her mother or a strong woman to assist her," Gu Chengji decided. "That's true. Be careful, big brother, and don't fall into her trap." Gu Chengya ran into the village after that. Gu Chengji, on the other hand, walked toward Chun Hong. At this time, Chun Hong also noticed Gu Chengji. Seeing that it wasn't the person she had been thinking about, she cried as she demanded, "Why is it you? Why? Are you here waiting for someone?" Gu Chengji asked with a faint smile. How could that be? I just didn't expect it to be Brother Gu." Chun Hong replied with an awkward smile. "That's good. I was afraid that I would ruin your plans." After Gu Chengji finished speaking, he sat 3 meters away from her. At the same time, he was certain she was here to set up a trap for Gu Chengya. What a pity. Her acting skills were wasted because she ran her mouth. However, he soon realized that he was wrong. Seeing her grimace as she moved, he knew she had twisted her ankle for real and that she was a ruthless person willing to do anything for her goal. Chunhong tried getting up a few times, but only ended up in more pain. She could only ask for help. Brother Gu, I beg you to help me up. Let's just wait. Chungya has returned to the village to call for help. Besides, even if you stand up, you need someone to support you. I'm not suited to do that. But don't worry, they'll stay here and help you drive away any wild animals that might come. Gu Chengji assured her while shaking his head. When Chunhong saw how he avoided her like the devil, she was so furious that her leg hurt even more. She stayed silent after that. She was also afraid of being seen by others if he helped her. She didn't want to be Gu Chengzi's concubine. On the other end, Gu Chengya hadn't run far when he bumped into Widow Hua, who immediately came forward. Auntie, you've come at the right time. Chunhong sprained her ankle on the mountain. Come with me. She sprained her ankle? Is it serious? I'm not sure. We didn't want to cause a misunderstanding, so we didn't go up to take a look. You guys, yes, my big brother is nearby. I ran down to look for someone to help her. Widow Hua was upset when she heard that. It was one thing for her to disagree with her daughter's marriage to Gu Chengya, but she didn't want her daughter to be avoided like the plague. It seemed that this marriage was impossible. She would take advantage of the fact that she couldn't walk with her sprained ankle to persuade her to give up. When the two arrived, they saw Gu Chengji standing on a stone and looking into the distance. As for Chunhong, she was sitting on the hard ground and still struggling. She had to move as she was lying on the cold ground and was afraid she would freeze to death. Widow Hua's heart ached when she saw this. She quickly ran down and asked, "How's your injury? Is it serious?" "Mother, I'm in pain." When Chunhong saw her, she immediately threw herself into her arms and wailed pitifully. When Widow Hua heard this, she immediately rolled up her daughter's trousers a little to take a look. Her nose twitched, and tears streamed down her face when she saw her ankle swollen like a steamed bun. However, she couldn't let the two Gu brothers laugh at her now. She helped her daughter up quickly and said, "Let's go. Mother will help you quickly find a doctor." Ouch, lighter, lighter. It hurts so much. Chunhong cried out in pain while standing up, and the pain was so intense that she couldn't help but shed tears. Chapter 178 Experiment. Because Chunhong couldn't move her legs, Widow Hua had no choice but to bend over and carry her daughter. Fortunately, walking from her to the foot of the mountain wasn't too difficult, and the two women quickly went down the mountain. However, Chunhong still cried out in pain the entire way. As they left, the two brothers hiding behind a large rock emerged. Gu Chengji heard Chunhong's cries, gradually getting further away. He turned his head and teased, "The girl deliberately suffered such a heavy injury in order to get close to you. Isn't her love beautiful? Why, your heart aches?" Gu Chengye glared at him and retorted, "What does it have to do with me? She's here for you," Gu Chengji said as they went down the mountain. After Widow Hua went down the mountain, she carried Chunhong to Gu Shengrua's house and knocked on it. However, even after knocking for a long time, she only heard a dog barking, and no one opened the door. At that moment, Sister Tian walked out and saw the mother and daughter's sorry state. She paused momentarily before quickly going forward to support Chunhong. "Sister Hua, what's wrong with Chunhong?" She twisted her leg. "Is there no one in Dr. Gus' house?" Widow Hua inquired, panting heavily. "Dr. Gu shouldn't be at home. I saw him rushing out while drying the cabbage in the courtyard. As for Zhouing, I'm not sure. By the way, do you guys want to wait for Dr. Gu at my home?" asked Sister Tian. Without waiting for Widow Hua to speak, Chunhong pushed Sister Tian away. "No, Mother, let's use the ice at home to reduce the swelling and wait for Dr. Gu to come back." "All right, let's go home." Widow Hua could only reply with a dry laugh. Sister Tian looked at Chunhong's attitude and remembered her previous outbursts, so she didn't insist on their stay. After they left, she shook her head in pity. It seemed that Sister Hua's life wouldn't be easy in the future. Zhouing looked at the sky after she finished her work and exited her interspace. Noticing that the sky had turned dark, she went to the kitchen to cook dinner. After she was done, she left a portion for Gu Chungrui and kept it warm in a pot. She went back to her room to sleep after that. She thought Gu Chungrui wouldn't be coming back tonight, so she was surprised when he rushed back in the middle of the night. Zhouing looked at him in surprise and asked, "Rui, didn't you say that you wouldn't come back if it were too late? I'm in a hurry to do an experiment. Send me into your interspace after I finish eating dinner. Go back to your room, and I'll go to the kitchen to get you your food." After Zhouing finished speaking, she took a small flashlight and went to the kitchen. Seeing this, Gu Chungrui took her offer and went into their house to wash his face with cold water, refreshing himself. After that, she brought the food to him, and the two entered her inner space. Gu Chungrui carried the food and sat at the dining table. "Babe, help yourself. They'll be busy here today, so you don't have to wait for me." "That's fine, but you must take care of your health. Her poison isn't lethal, so there's no need to rush." Gu Chungrui nodded, then lowered his head to eat. Zhouing was no longer sleepy after getting this, so she simply collected some wild duck eggs and bird nests. After she was done, she washed the duck eggs and mixed lime into them to make century eggs. When she was done, Gu Chungrui still didn't come down. She had no choice but to leave her interspace and was surprised to find the sun high in the sky. She tidied up the house and unlocked the door. Not long after, Sister Tian walked over. "Sister, you're up. Is Dr. Gu back?" Sister Hua's daughter, Chunhong, twisted her ankle yesterday and has been waiting for Dr. Gu. She's been here several times throughout the night. "Is it serious? He came back late last night and hasn't woken up yet." "Quite. I saw her ankle was bruised and swollen to the size of a steamed bun." Chapter 179 Antidote. "All right, I'll ask him to come over after we're done with breakfast," Zhouing said. "Okay, I'll leave you to your stuff." After Sister Tian finished speaking, she turned around and went home. Zhouing turned around and went to the kitchen. She first entered the inner space and saw Gu Chungrui still busy in the laboratory, so she didn't interrupt him and went cooking. When she returned from her cooking, Gu Chungrui was already sitting at the side with his eyes closed and resting. She said, "Let's eat, and we'll talk after we finish the rest." "All right, let's have our meal first." Gu Chungrui agreed and left the inner space with her. After they had their fill, Zhouing told him about Chunhong's sprain. "Do you want to go and take a look?" "Yeah, they'll go out and get a breeze of fresh air. I feel like I've walked into a dead end." "Go ahead, and you'd better have a good sleep when you come back before continuing," Zhouing reminded him as she began to clean up the dishes. Gu Chungrui went to Widow Hua's place and went to sleep in the inner space after he returned. Zhouing was afraid that more people would come, so she locked her door and went into the mountains with Zhuang Er. When they were deep in the mountains, she brought Zhuang into her interspace and let him go around to play. Meanwhile, she took out some soybeans and green beans and went to the workshop to make some yuba and vermicelli using her machines. After all, with the progress of the Manor's workshop, even the slightest delay would result in a shortage of goods. After she was done, she made a pot of beef bone, tendon, and meat soup. She planned to turn this into a pot of sour beef soup when she returned home. After she was done, she called Zhuang back, and the two left the space. She just happened to encounter a wild rooster and 3 hens looking for food in the grass. Thus, she immediately took out an air gun and shot the rooster's head. At the same time, Zhuang pounced on the fattest hen and bit its neck, scaring the other 2 hens away. When Zhouing saw this, she went forward and picked up the 2 chickens. "Let's go, Zhuang. I'll make you some chicken stew tonight." After that, she and her dog walked down the mountain. By the time they reached the foot of the mountain, the sun had already set. From afar, she saw Mrs. Wang wandering around at the entrance, and she paused for a moment before quickening her pace. "Auntie, do come in and sit," Zhouing offered as she took out a key and opened her door. Mrs. Wang shook her head. "It's fine. I'm just here to ask how Shengru's progress is going, as my daughter has to return tomorrow morning." "Well, he went to the clinic today to try making an antidote, but I don't know the specific situation. They'll have him look for you when he returns. Can he come over regardless of whether the antidote can be made? If there isn't an antidote, giving her a prescription to recuperate her body first is fine too. All right, they'll remember that, Zhouing affirmed, and she handed the hin to her. I got this from the mountain just now. Take it back and make a bowl of chicken soup for her. No need. Just take it. We can't finish 2 chickens. Zhouing insisted as she handed the hin to her. Mrs. Wang thought of her daughter's weak state and took it in the end. After thanking Zhouing, Mrs. Wang returned home. In the evening, Zhouing made 4 dishes, a sour beef soup, a chicken mushroom stew, stir-fried celery, and a plate of mixed radish salad. Of course, Zhuang was rewarded with beef soup with some bones, meat, and 2 steamed buns. When she entered the inner space, she saw Gu Chungrui sitting on the sofa on the first floor, leisurely drinking some tea and snacking on some beef jerky. Look at you. You've made the antidote? She asked with a smile. Chapter 180, Living Up to Expectations. Gu Chungrui nodded and smiled. That's right. I just got it done less than 20 minutes ago. Let's go out and celebrate then, Zhouing exclaimed as she pulled him out of her interspace. Gu Chungrui saw the dishes on the table and said happily, I guess we are really celebrating. You've made some chicken stew for me. Of course. Let's hurry up and eat, and we'll head to your eldest uncle's house. His daughter is leaving tomorrow, so we have to go there by today. Shouldn't we prepare some gifts? Yeah, we do. Isn't there some ginseng slice in the interspace someone collected before? Let's bring them a small jar of ginseng slices, some blood-replenishing medicine you made, and 2 bottles of skin cream. That should be enough, right? Of course. She's the wife of a mayor and wouldn't lack anything else. Gu Chungrui nodded his head in agreement. He passed her a drumstick, and the couple started eating. After the meal, the 2 took the antidote and the gifts they had prepared, locked up, and rushed to the patriarch's house. When she arrived, the family had just finished dinner and was idly chatting. In Mrs. Wang's arms was an unfamiliar little girl of about 7 years old. If Zhouing wasn't mistaken, she was Gu Zi's eldest daughter. A young woman was also at the side, holding a little boy in her arms. It was Gu Qingjin's wife and son, Mrs. Fong and Barney. When the patriarch saw them, he stood up and greeted them warmly. Oh, you guys are here. Have you 2 eaten? We have. We came over after having dinner. Gu Chungrui spoke as he set the items in his hands on the table. Let's sit down and talk. The patriarch invited them to sit. Chungrui, have you made the antidote? Mrs. Wang looked at Gu Chungrui. Mother, there's no rush. Don't keep urging Chungrui. Gu Zi spoke quickly. To be honest, she didn't have high hopes. After all, even the imperial physicians wouldn't be able to find a cure for a poison of unknown origins. Well, what did you know? I did it, and am here to give you the antidote. However, this antidote cannot be taken all at once. It has to be taken separately over 3 days, 3 times a day, and 2 pills each time. Gu Chungrui instructed as he personally handed the antidote to Gu Zi. Thank you, Chungrui. Can this really wholly remove the poison? Gu Zi clutched the medicine bottle tightly as she choked with emotion. Yes, but since your body has already been damaged, you need some time to recuperate. Could you also give me a prescription for that? I don't trust anyone else. You're being a little paranoid. To be honest, if you want to take care of your body, you first have to be good at distinguishing between friends and enemies. Otherwise, you'll be tricked again, Gu Chungrui advised her. Sigh. The patriarch sighed heavily after hearing this. The others also fell silent. Gu Chungrui saw that everyone had stopped talking and didn't ask any more questions. He stood up and said, It's getting late, and we wish you a safe journey tomorrow. Uncle, we'll be going back now, he said to the patriarch. The clan leader thought of the troubles in Gu Zi's family and had no intention of holding the couple back. He nodded and thanked them, saying, In the future, come over, and I will thank you again. Qingjin, send them off, will you? All right. Gu Qingjin responded, and then stood up to send them out. He asked, Chungrui, you know how to play chess, right? We're free during the new year, So why don't you come for a bout of chess together when you're free? All right, sure. We'll be heading back now. Gu Chungrui said his farewells as he walked back with Zhou. The couple was busy in the inner space for the next few days or out for visits, and their everyday lives were quite relaxed. Of course, Gu Chungrui would occasionally receive patients who sought his consultations. Chapter 181 Fireworks 1. In the blink of an eye. It was the 6th day of the new year, and they opened for business. However, business was slow in the new year, and the idle and relaxed days ended on the 15th. Because of the fireworks show, the town was bustling with people. Zhou and Gu Chungrui went to their respective shops early in the morning to get busy. Zhou and Chunyang rolled out a lot of sweet dumplings, planning to fry them at night to join in the festival. All kinds of stalls were set up from the afternoon until the evening. The street, which was already narrow, was completely congested. They set up a small stall to sell the sweet dumplings. Zhou also requested that lanterns be specially made with the big words, fried sweet dumplings, on them to be eye-catching on the night street. Candied gourd, sweet and sour candied gourd. 3 coppers for 1, 5 coppers for 2. When Zhou heard this, she and Sun Hongliang went out to buy a bunch for everyone. Just as she was about to turn around, she felt that someone was touching her money pouch. She immediately grabbed the hand and looked down. It was a skinny 7- or 8-year-old child wearing beggar's clothes, looking at her with a face of panic. Let's go. We'll talk about why you're stealing, Zhou said as she grabbed the candied gourd in one hand and dragged him to her store with the other. When the child saw this, he immediately frowned and cried out, "Help! There are human traffickers. Please save me. It seems like you're familiar with the business. Someone must have taught you before." Zhou Ying's grip tightened. Sun Hongliang looked at the child and said, "Kid, you've mistakenly targeted the wrong person. No one in this area doesn't know Manager Zhou, so no one will care even if you scream your lungs out." The child, shouting at the top of his lungs, was stunned for a moment and glanced around. Sure enough, no one was coming to help him. Thinking of that, he raised his hand and tried to bite Zhou Ying's hand. Zhou had to retract her hand, and the child immediately took the opportunity to disappear into the crowd. Seeing this, Zhou had no choice but to return to the store empty-handed. She asked Sun Hongliang to put away the candied gourd in oil paper before asking, "Didn't we take care of all the little beggars in the town? Why is there more?" During the new year, a small group of refugees came to town. Could he be one of them? Another possibility is that someone previously hiding somewhere took advantage to steal today. Sun Hongliang spoke with uncertainty. Zhou looked at the busy street and said, "There are crooks mixed in with the honest folks tonight, and it's easy for something to happen. We must be careful." "Understood, boss. They'll get the band of children to come over. They're smarter than adults." Sun Hongliang assured her as he called for a child beggar guarding the ventilation fan, giving him a task. The child beggar immediately took off his vest and hat and ran out. Seeing this, Zhou went to the back and reminded everyone to be more vigilant tonight. At night, business was booming, especially at their store that sold fried sweet dumplings. 888 dumplings were sold out in less than an hour. After dinner, most of everyone went to the dock to watch the fireworks, and the street was much quieter. When everyone had finished, Zhou handed out the candied gourds, each with a stick. After they finished, Guwen smiled and asked, "Mistress, we're almost done here. Can we go to the river to watch the fireworks? I heard there are also activities such as praying to the gods, lion dancing, and so on. At midnight, there will also be all kinds of fireworks, and it will be a beautiful night." Chapter 182 Fireworks 2. Fireworks? Is it the kind of colorful fireworks? Zhou asked curiously. "No, it's just the kind made of gunpowder and will be shot in different shapes. There's a grape shape, cranes, rats, and many other things. I even heard that the cranes will be in a flying form." Guwen said so excitedly. "Really?" Zhou Ying's interest was also piqued when she heard this, as expected of a fireworks festival. It's true. There are rat-shaped fireworks because this is the year of the rat, and it follows the 12 zodiacs and is different every year. A local shop assistant, Zhang Dake, replied, "How about this? Whoever has seen it before will give up their spots for the others to go, and they must come back early." Zhouing looked at Gu Wen's expectant eyes and finally nodded in agreement. "Thank you, mistress. We'll be back after watching the fireworks." Gu Wen turned around and ran after that. Fang Qing and Gu Wu immediately followed. In the end, even Zhao Sheng's family of 3 followed suit. Zhouing looked at Zhao Cheng, Chun Yang, and Qian Yang. "You guys aren't going?" "Maybe next year. The kitchen can't be left empty," Zhao Cheng said, shaking his head. Besides, they could also see the fireworks from the 2nd floor, and there was no need to join the crowd. "All right, then we'll take turns next year." Just as Zhouing finished speaking, Gu Chengrui walked over. "Babe, I heard that the fireworks tonight will be beautiful. Let's go and take a look." Without waiting for her to speak, Sun Hongliang replied, "You guys go ahead. There aren't many customers now, so just a few of us will do." "Sorry for the trouble." Zhouing apologized and went to the back. She changed out of her work uniform and took out a large bag of tear-inducing powder mixed with devil's pepper and mustard from her inner space. "Keep this well," she said as she handed it to Sun Hongliang. "Although it's not straight-up poison, it might as well be. Remember, you all are the most important. If we lose these objects, we can always repurchase them. Don't worry, mistress. We will definitely protect the restaurant." Zhang Dake's nose twitched. He had only heard of servants sacrificing their lives to protect their master's goods and never heard of the master sacrificing their interests to protect a servant's life. This made him touched. The others quickly chimed in. "All right, we'll go now. We'll bring you gifts when we come back." Zhouing said her farewell and left the restaurant with Gu Chengrui. At that moment, Gu Chengrui thought of the packet of tear-inducing powder and held her hand to ask, "Did something happen?" "Just in case. I hope I'm making a mountain out of a molehill," said Zhouing. She told him about her encounter with the thief today and the town's refugees. Gu Chengrui nodded in agreement. "That's good. With so many people gathered in the town, some petty thieves will inevitably be around. However, I heard that County Mayor Kong has also brought the garrison here. There should be no problem with safety." "I see. It's good that there won't be any major trouble," Zhouing replied, and the two looked around the roadside stalls. There was a variety of food, especially snacks. There were fried cakes, radish cakes, vegetable bowls, and so on. However, they only focused on handicrafts. Each bought a lantern with a mouse pattern. They saw a doll, the kind with embroidery. Gu Chengrui then bought Zhouing a small pig doll with a curled tail based on her zodiac sign. "This is for you." "Thank you." Zhouing took it with a smile and thanked him. She wanted to kiss him, but after looking around, she didn't continue. Zhouing and her husband went to a stand and asked the owner to make a pair of clay figurines according to their appearance. "Chengrui, 3rd sister-in-law, I see you two have also come to get a clay figurine made." Gu Qingshi walked over and greeted her with a smile. Chapter 183 Fireworks 3. Gu Chengrui turned his head and saw that he was alone. So he asked, "Did you come on your own?" "Yes, we're setting up a stall in front of the shop today and selling millet cakes." Gu Qingshi pointed at a stall not far away. Gu Chengrui turned his head and saw his second uncle Gu standing in front of their shop. He was guarding the stall, and there were many customers there. But thinking about it, it made sense. Most of the people who came to see the fireworks were from low-income families. A piece of cake would be enough to fill their stomachs. "Do you want to come with us?" Gu Chengrui asked. "Can I?" Gu Qingshi asked expectantly. "Of course, as long as you don't run around. You guys wait for a minute. They'll go and inform my father." Upon hearing this, Gu Qingshi immediately turned around and ran back as if he were afraid that Gu Chengrui would go back on his words. When he came back, their clay figurine had already been made. Zhouing saw that it looked pretty similar to her, so she asked the stall owner to make another one for Gu Qingshi. After it was done, Gu Gu Chungrui held one figurine in each hand and walked toward the river. When they arrived, they found that it was already crowded. Fortunately, a row of lanterns was hanging by the river, which lit up the riverbank, so the people were still standing around orderly, and there was no chaos. At the same time, through the conversations of the people, they learned that County Mayor Kong and a group of officials had already returned after paying their respects to the river god. Just as the three of them were looking forward to the fireworks, the sound of gongs and drums suddenly rang out. The crowd erupted in applause as a group of lion dancers emerged from a warehouse near the dock and walked up the river bank. The crowd naturally followed, and Zhou Ying's group of three naturally did not fall behind. The lively lion dance was fun to watch. One moment it was walking near the table, and the next moment it jumped on it nimbly, attracting a burst of applause. When they reached a riverbank outside the town, the lion dance stopped. As soon as they left, everyone saw the row of fireworks prepared by the river. Chungrui, what do you think this kind of fireworks will look like? Gu Qingxi asked curiously. I'm not sure, but judging from the exquisite workmanship, it should be quite good. Gu Chungrui shook his head. To be honest, I thought the 15th day would be a lantern festival, where people would guess riddles and play with lanterns. I never expected this festival to be so grand. Zhou Ying said expectantly. Don't you always guess riddles on the 15th in the capital? I'm already tired of it, and it's not fun at all. Gu Chengxi shook his head. This is a local custom, and each place has its own customs and traditions. That's why it's better to travel and see it for yourself instead of just hearing about it. Only after experiencing it personally can you understand the fun. Gu Chungrui reminded her. At that moment, a commotion suddenly broke out in the crowd. Then, a group of soldiers ran in and drove the crowd 1 mile away from the fireworks. It seems like it's about to start. Let's stand back a little. After Gu Chungrui finished speaking, he led them and retreated. This was because gunpowder wasn't something that humans could entirely control in ancient times. The slightest error would cause it to deviate from its intended path, which would be problematic if they were injured. Thus, the three retreated all the way to a pile of ruins far from the river bank. After that, the three simply stood on top of the ruins. Not only could they see the entire scenery from here, but there weren't many people either. Soon, as the gongs and drums sounded, sky lanterns flew into the sky, lighting up the dark night. The first rack of fireworks was lit up when the lanterns were almost gone. As the fluorescent yellow fireball fell to the ground, the fireworks started emitting a blue light, which looked stunning in the night. Chapter 184 Rest. The following fireworks were in the shape of a crowned crane. Before it was ignited, the red-crowned crane looked elegant, its white feathers fluttering in the wind as if it were about to ascend to the immortal world. After it was lit, with a melodic sizzling sound, oval-shaped eggs fell from the crane's tail and exploded into a ball of fire in midair. It really looked like it was laying eggs. What a spectacular scene! In the end, the crowned crane soared into the sky and burned brightly in the night. Next was a fish, and finally, a rat. When the final rat-shaped firework was released, the people were still unsatisfied. At that moment, a scream suddenly rang out. It was unknown what the scream was about, but soon there was a commotion, which finally turned into chaos. After a while, the three discovered that someone had lost a child, and someone else shouted that they had also lost a girl. Let's go back to the restaurant, Gu Chungrui said. I'm afraid we won't be able to go home today. Why? Gu Qingxi asked in confusion. Because so many children have gone missing, the authorities will definitely lock down the town for an inspection. Or rather, they have already locked it down, so we can't go home. Zhou Ying said. Oh, then where are we going to stay? These human traffickers really deserve to die. Gu Qingxi said it gloomily. You go back to your snack shop. If you don't have a place to stay, you can come to our place and squeeze in with the others. Gu Chungrui said. Thank you for taking me in, third brother. Gu Qingxi immediately grabbed his arm and said. Gu Chungrui smiled and didn't say anything else as the three hurried back. When they passed the snack shop, they realized it was locked. They didn't know if the others had gone to watch the fireworks or if they had gone home, so they brought Gu Chengxi back to the restaurant. Sun Hongliang, who was settling the accounts, saw them come in and asked, "Mistress, why have you all come back this fast? Have the others returned yet?" Zhouing asked, "Not yet, but it should be soon. Something happened over there. I heard that some people lost their children. If you're done recording the accounts, you can go back first, and we'll stay here tonight." Sun Hongliang was stunned for a moment. Thinking of his family, he nodded. "Then he'll go back first and come back early tomorrow." After he finished, he put a sheet of paper into the account book, closed it, and locked it in the drawer with the bookmark. After he left, Zhouing also allowed Zhangde and the others to return and closed up shop. As for the group of little beggars, she didn't let them go. First, it was so she could keep an eye on them, as it wasn't safe for them to go back now. Therefore, they were gathered in the central room in the backyard. They laid out a few straw mats and a few blankets so the children could sleep in the room for the night. As for Gu Chengxi, it was arranged for him to sleep with Zhao Sheng. Soon, Gu Wan and the other two ran in, talking and laughing. However, after waiting a long time, Li Sheng's family of 3 did not appear. Zhouing suddenly felt a little uneasy, afraid that something would happen to Li Yu. Fortunately, the family of 3 finally came back around midnight. "What's the matter with you guys?" Zhouing asked hurriedly. "Why are you back so late?" After the fireworks, they discovered human traffickers. The officers immediately sealed off the scene and checked everyone one by one. "We were delayed when we were queuing," Li Sheng said with a fearful expression. He hugged Li Yu tightly after he finished speaking. "I see. You guys should go to bed early." Zhouing comforted them and told the family of 3 to go home. After they left, Gu Chengrui turned his head and said, "Babe, you should go to sleep too. They'll be fine here." "That's right. Sister-in-law, you should go to sleep. Brother Gu and I will take care of things here." Tian Jiaowang walked over and said. Chapter 185 Seedling. "All right. Remember to call me if you need anything," Zhouing told them. She turned around and took a pot of coals back to the main room. The night passed peacefully. The next morning, everyone got up and went to do their own thing. After breakfast, when Sun Hongliang and the others came to work, everyone discovered that the officers had investigated the entire night and caught a small group of human traffickers in a yard in town early in the morning. They also heard that several villages had reported that someone had stolen food from their village. Therefore, the entire town was in a mess now. Officers and soldiers searched everywhere. As a result, business was low throughout the day. During the inspection in the morning, they treated 2 soldiers to a meal. Fortunately, the soldiers were tight on time and only had a bowl of beef noodles each before they left. In the evening, when Zhouing and the other 3 went back on the donkey cart, they learned from Qian Zhuang and Gu Hanjiang that every village was guarding strictly against strangers. If it weren't for the fact that they were used to wandering around this area, they wouldn't be able to enter the village, let alone collect vegetables. "Miss," Qian Zhuang said after he finished complaining, "the vegetables in each village are almost all harvested, and it won't be easy to buy more of them in the future." "I see, but I guess it's normal since there's a food shortage. You guys should go to the different villages and look since we can't do business if we don't have produce." "We will try that then. I just don't know if they'll sell it to us." "You can ask around. You can tell me if you find any, but they aren't willing to sell. I can talk to them about it." "All right, leave this to us brothers." When Qian Zhuang heard that he only needed to ask for information, he immediately patted his chest. "Yes. By the way, starting next month, you will each be paid 500 coppers." "Really? Thank you so much, miss," Guerjiang said with a smile. "As long as you guys work hard, your salary will rise." Definitely. We'll definitely do a good job." The 2 of them nodded. It was challenging to get a long-term job in their village. Another main thing was that this work was easy and comfortable, so they didn't want to give up. Half a month later, the river was opened for business. Once the merchants arrived, the dock became lively, and of course, the business of all restaurants got better. At the same time, the land wasn't frozen solid anymore. Because of Gu Shengru's previous talk about growing chili, buying up barren land in the village became particularly popular. The Gu family alone bought 5 acres of it. When Zhouing saw this, she had to hurry up and water the land in her backyard. She found a plow and plowed about 80% of the land in the back. She also bought a tarp to build a simple, warm shed to grow chili seedlings. At the same time, she had planted 10 acres of chili seedlings on the manor's grassland. Of course, the dormitory she had promised Uncle Yin and the others had already started construction, all of which were made of real bricks. As a result, 12 long-term workers brought their wives and children to the manor to settle down. When the villagers learned that Zhouing had begun to grow seedlings, they began to speed up plowing their newly bought land. Chunhong could finally go out after an entire month of rest. After a month of patient advice from Widow Hua, in addition to the fact that the Gu brothers had avoided her like the plague when she was in trouble, and later, she was also met with Gu Zixin's indifference, which made Chunhong understand the reality of her situation. Even if she didn't mind being married into the Gu family, who were sinners in the capital, the Gu family wouldn't accept her. Thus, she gave up on the idea of entering the Gu family. Widow Hua went to the vegetable garden one day to do some gardening while Chunhong had nothing to do. So, she thought of going to town to pick up some handiwork. Just as she left the embroidery workshop after taking a job, she was knocked out by a drug when passing by an alleyway. She was stuffed into a carriage and brought to a small courtyard. Chapter 186. She saw a chubby, middle-aged man standing before her when she woke up. She quickly stood up from the chair and demanded, "Who are you? Why did you capture me?" Chunhong, who lives in Shanghe village and has a widowed mother. Previously, you were an assistant chef in a manor in Shanghe village. You were also the one who passed on Miss Chiao's message to Gu Chengrue. The man turned around and sat on the chair opposite her. Your manager Wang of the original Dongxin restaurant? Chunhong sized him up and asked in disbelief. It seems that your memory is decent. Wang Quan nodded in satisfaction. Why did you bring me here? For my use. No, I refuse. Do you think you can refuse? Wang Quan sneered. When Chunhong heard this, she quickly looked around and saw 2 big men standing guard outside the door. She immediately asked softly, "What do you want me to do? You also know that Dongxin restaurant was originally mine. I just want to take it back." But that's impossible. I heard that the Grassland Taste restaurant, like the Hongyun restaurant, is under General Zhou. Don't worry about that. If you want to live a good life, you better just listen to me. What do you want me to do? Get away to work inside Grassland Taste restaurant and get the recipe for the hot pot. Ultimately, make Gu Chengrue and Zhouing fall out. Chunhong didn't understand what he meant at first, but she quickly realized that he was asking her to seduce Gu Chengrue. Thinking of Miss Chiao getting rejected and Zhou Ying's appearance, she shook her head. "I'm afraid it won't work. You'd better find a more beautiful woman to do it. This job is yours. As long as you follow my plan, I promise to make you the manager of Grassland Taste Restaurant." After Wang Quan finished speaking, he pulled her into the house. When Chunhong saw this, she immediately had a bad feeling in her heart. She immediately struggled and said, They'll do it, all right? Just let me go." "How will you do what I say if I let you go?" Wang Quan laughed and pushed her onto the bed in his room, then ripped off her clothes and pounced on her. No. Let me go. I beg you, let me go. I'll promise you anything." Chunhong shouted with distress. However, her cries for help were soon muffled. When she came out again, her hair was disheveled, her eyes were red and swollen, and there was even blood at the corner of her mouth. The clothes on her body were torn and tattered, and she looked like a rag doll that had been dismembered. Wang Quan, who was behind her, walked out in a refreshed manner. "Someone, help her wash up and get her a change of clothes." After he finished speaking, he left the room in big strides. Soon, 2 maids came in with a basin. They gave her a simple wash and changed her into a set of neat, coarse clothes. Then, They turned around and walked out. Chun-Hong returned to her senses, picked up her bag, and ran out. At that moment, Wang Quan stepped back in, and she was so frightened that she immediately retreated. Seeing this, Wang Quan stepped forward and pinched her little face with a smile. "Silly girl, I'm helping you here." Afterward, he pulled her to a chair and told her some things in a low voice. "After this matter is done, you will not be short of glory, splendor, wealth, or status." After hearing this, Chun-Hong only looked at him angrily and did not reply. "It's wrong of you to hate me. You should hate Gu Chungrui and his wife. Would you have to be in this state if it weren't for them? Remember, you don't have much time," Wang Quan threatened. "You have to hurry. Otherwise, you and your mother." At this point, a cold light flashed in Wang Quan's eyes, and he continued, "Don't play any tricks with me. From now on, you will always be under my surveillance." Chapter 187 Request You. After hearing this, Chun-Hong gritted her teeth and looked at him angrily. "Haha, you look so full of hatred. You should be redirecting that to Gu Chungrui and Zhou. Wang Quan said as he stood up again. "Go. I don't care what method you use. Get into the Grassland Taste restaurant within 3 days, and he'll come to you." Looking at his shameless appearance, Chun-Hong wanted to tear him apart. However, on second thought, she realized that her situation was partly due to Gu Chungrui and his wife. Hence, she did not refute, and instead got up and left. Seeing this, Wang Quan went out and sent a man to follow her. After leaving town, Chun-Hong realized that someone was following her. She quickly thought of what Wang Quan had said before, turning around to look. Sure enough, it was the person she had seen in the small courtyard. This person didn't avoid being seen at all, and he just followed her casually. She was shocked and scared, realizing that it seemed she could not escape. After Zhou and Gu Chungrui returned in the evening, they went to the backyard to check on the chili seedlings. After confirming that they had sprouted, the two finally breathed a sigh of relief. After dinner, Chun-Hong came to their door. Gu Chungrui looked at her awkward way of walking and frowned. "Miss Chun-Hong, you've sprained your leg again. You must be more careful. Otherwise, it will leave behind problems in your leg if you do it too many times." Zhou glanced at her, but soon found that her situation wasn't right. It didn't look like she had a sprained foot. Instead, it looked like... Chun-Hong looked at the couple's puzzled eyes and was shocked. She had tried her best to cover it up and didn't expect them to see through it. She laughed dryly. "I'm sorry to have embarrassed myself in front of you, Dr. Gu. I didn't sprain my foot this time. It's just that I accidentally slipped and stretched my muscles. So, I wanted to get some medicine to relax my muscles and help my blood flow. I'll give you some safflower oil then. It's good and useful for your case." Gu Chungrui decided. He returned to the house and took out a small bottle of safflower oil, handing it to her. 5 coppers. All right. Chun-Hong took it and gave him 5 coppers. However, she didn't have any intention of leaving. Instead, she looked at them hesitantly. "Is there anything else, Miss Chun-Hong?" Zhou asked. Chun-Hong pursed her lips and took a deep breath. "I don't know if your restaurant is still short of people, but I want to find a job. By the way, I used to work as a kitchen helper in the manor of Shaha village. I can cook common noodle dishes and am good at chopping vegetables." Zhou felt strange. She had heard from her 6th aunt that Chun-Hong had been pestering Gu Chungya ever since she returned from the manor. Why did she suddenly want to work in a restaurant? She suddenly thought of the matter of Mrs. Liu asking them for the dessert recipe. Did this matter have anything to do with Mrs. Liu and her son? Thinking of this, she decided to be cautious and refused, saying, "I'm really sorry, but our restaurant doesn't need to recruit people at the moment. We'll talk about it in the future if there's an opportunity." When Chun-Hong heard this, she was stunned. However, when she thought of Wang Quan's threat, she could only brace herself and say, "I'm begging you. I don't ask for much. Even if I have to do odd jobs, I'm fine, but please just hire me." "But why do you have to enter our restaurant?" Zhou asked with a faint smile. Chun-Hong looked at Zhou Ying's suspicious eyes, and her heart trembled. Could it be that she had exposed herself? No way to calm down and deliberately held her breath. After her face turned red from the lack of oxygen, she said with a troubled expression, "You know my family's situation. It's not easy to support ourselves, and we don't have much silver left. So I thought of saving up some dowry and then leaving some money for my mother's retirement." Chapter 188. Chili Seedlings. Zhou and Gu Chungrui looked at each other. In the end, Zhou still nodded with a troubled expression. "All right, you can come, but only to help clear the tables and do cleaning jobs. As for the monthly payment, it's 300 coppers." Of course, the reason she agreed so readily was not that they really pitied her. Although there were only a mother and daughter in their family, they had 5 acres of land. In addition, Widow Hua's needlework was spectacular, and she had always taken on a lot of work in the village or town. Chunhong's excuse wasn't valid at all. Instead, she felt that there must be something strange about her doing this, and it was better to keep her under their nose and see what she was up to. "Thank you, you too. Can I come to work the day after tomorrow? My legs are a little weak now." Chunhong asked with a smile. "Sure, but remember, you must be at the restaurant by noon. Otherwise, we'll have to dock your pay if you're late. We'll deduct 3 coppers for each time you're late, which is our restaurant's rule." Zhou reminded her. Chunhong was stunned for a moment as she did not expect there to be such a rule, but she still nodded and said, "All right, I'll remember that. You guys go ahead with your work, and I'll head back now." After saying that, she turned around and walked out. Seeing this, Zhou sent her out. Just as she was about to lock the door, the patriarch and the village chief came together. She hurriedly greeted them. "Grandpa Village Chief, Uncle, please excuse me. I'll go make a pot of tea." "Oh, there's no need for that when it's so late. We'll leave after we ask you something." The patriarch quickly stopped her. "Uncle, you're here for the chili, right?" Gu Chengrui asked. "Yes, I wanted to ask you how many seeds you can give out. Now that the villagers' enthusiasm is high, the Qian clan also wants to plant them. I'm afraid you won't have enough seeds, which will disappoint everyone." The parrot nodded. "Indeed, this matter has to be settled in advance. Otherwise, good things may turn bad in the end." The village chief agreed. Gu Chengrui nodded in understanding. "I won't hide it from you. We have planted nearly 11 acres of chili seedlings, which will be enough for about 55 to 60 acres of land when they fully grow. I don't know how much land the village had cleaned up. As for the seeds, you can plant them on your own, just like how you usually plant vegetables, but you'll have to wait a little longer. Oh yeah, I wanted to ask why you had to cover the seedlings with a tarp. Can't you wait for the weather to be warmer before you grow the seedlings?" The village chief asked in confusion. Even the patriarch was curious. He had wanted to ask before, but the oil mill had been busy recently, so he had forgotten. Because there are many pests and diseases in the summer, the rain will also affect the chilies. We want to make them mature earlier to increase their production, Zhou explained. Even in modern times, pests and diseases were difficult to control. It was impossible to prevent all of them, so she didn't want to cause more trouble if she didn't prepare fully. The patriarch and the village chief were farmers, so they quickly understood what she meant. They looked at each other and said, "We understand. We'll go back and do the math now. It's been hard on all of you. The extra land can allow everyone to grow more vegetables, such as cabbage, lettuce, and so on. If you guys don't have seeds, they'll help you buy some back, and you all just have to provide the grown vegetables to the restaurant by then." Zhou stood up and said, "This is also a way to balance things out. We'll make the arrangements accordingly." The village chief nodded in agreement. After the 2 of them left, 2 more patients came to visit. After sending them off, the couple went straight into the inner space to work. Many crops had matured and were ready to be harvested. Chapter 189. Sun Liang. After the harvest, other than the 2,000 acres of wheat, the rest of the dry land was planted with sweet potatoes. Zhou also collected some peach flowers. She planned to wait for this year's coconuts, olives, and moon laurel to ripen and extract some oil to make some lipstick products for sale. In the blink of an eye, it was the day when Chunhong came to the restaurant. Zhou waited for her to show up and told Fangqing and Chunyang to keep an eye on her and try to understand her purpose for coming here. 2 days later, Zhou learned from Chunyang that Chunhong had asked about the hot pot recipe more than once. But this was still in Zhou Ying's hands, and everyone told her that. After Zhou got the news, she guessed it probably wasn't Mrs. Liu and her son coercing Chunhong. Who could it be, then? She called Fangqing over and said, "For the next 2 days, you and the little beggars will keep an eye on Chunhong and see who she will be in contact with. Remember, just keep an eye on them and don't take any risks. As for the rest, we'll discuss it after you come back and decide what to do." "I understand. Leave this matter to us." Fangqing immediately went to find the little beggars to make arrangements. When Chunhong knew that the recipe was in Zhou Ying's hands and that the spices would be ground into powder every time, she knew it was impossible for her to steal the recipe. Therefore, after finishing her work at noon, Chunhong left the restaurant with the excuse that she needed to help Widow Hua buy some spools. Seeing this, Fangqing immediately followed her. However, he soon realized that Chunhong was being watched. In order to prevent the other party from discovering him, he had to send a little beggar to follow her. The little beggar was brilliant. He didn't go alone but found a friend who was begging outside to follow him. His companion was young and dressed in beggar's clothes, and they followed Chunhong to a small courtyard without a hitch. He inquired around the courtyard before returning to Grassland Taste Restaurant through the back door and informing Fangqing of the news. Then, Fangqing led his friends to Zhou Ying and told her about it. "Sun Liang? Who is this person again?" Zhou Ying was confused after hearing that. No matter what, she still cooked a bowl of beef noodles for his friend and said, "Eat first, but you have to remember that you can't tell anyone about what happened today. Otherwise, it will put you in danger. Do you understand?" "Manager Zhou, don't worry. We understand," his friend said with a smile as he chewed on the beef. Zhou Ying looked at his lively eyes and said, "Little guy, how old are you? What's your name?" "My name is Zhu Zi." "I'm 7 years old today. Don't worry, I'm very tight-lipped. I believe you. Hurry up and eat." Zhou Ying reassured him and turned to the kitchen. She took out 2 pounds of rice and handed it to him, saying, "This is the reward for this mission." "Thank you, Manager Zhou." Zhu Zi immediately stood up and bowed. Zhou Ying smiled, pinched his little face, and then went to work. When they got home in the evening, Zhou Ying told Gu Chungrui about the matter. "Rui, do you remember a person named Sun Liang? I don't have any impression of it. I'll go back and ask to see who he is." "All right. It's fine if they only want to steal the recipe, but I'm afraid they'll use some dirty means." Gu Chungrui nodded thoughtfully and said, "Remind the people in the kitchen to oversee the ingredients. They'll find out as soon as possible." However, Zhou Ying was still worried the next day after telling everyone the news. Finally, she simply installed a camera in a hidden corner and connected it to her mobile phone. This way, she could check it every day to prevent any accidents. On the other end, Chunhong knew that since it was not easy to get the prescription, she had to drive a wedge between the couple first. So the next day, she was thinking of ways to get close to Gu Chungrui, causing her to be distracted. Chapter 190 Responsibility Befitting Your Position. So after Chunhong broke another small plate, Sun Hongliang walked over and asked, "Chunhong, can you keep up? If you can't, then leave as soon as possible. Look at how distracted you are today. You don't look like you're even trying to work." "Manager Sun, please show mercy. I will definitely do my best, so please don't fire me." Chunhong hurriedly nodded and bowed. "I'll give you one last chance. If you screw up again, you'll be gone." Sun Hongliang paused and said, "By the way, I'll deduct the cost of this plate from your monthly salary." After saying that, he turned around and left. As for Chunhong, she bit her lips sadly. She thought of the people watching her outside, didn't refute, and obediently cleared the table. However, she was harboring hatred for Sun Hongliang inside her. It was just a plate. Why did he have to make such a big deal out of it? Moreover, Zhouing brought her here, but they didn't even give her special treatment. Thinking of this, a cold light flashed in her eyes. Since he started it, don't blame her for being heartless. Therefore, when they were resting after lunch, Chunhong deliberately went to Zhou Ying's room to complain about Sun Hongliang. She mainly complained that Sun Hongliang was disrespecting her. Zhouing had been in the society for a few years, so she knew that Chunhong was attempting to sow discord between them. She looked at her meaningfully and said, "When you were working at the Chiao family's manor, were you also absent-minded from time to time? Do you not need to pay for the things you broke?" "I." After Chunhong heard this, she raised her head and looked at her in surprise. Why was Zhouing acting differently from what she had imagined? Zhouing looked at her expression and sneered. A country has its laws, and a family has its own rules. Manager's son is just following the management of our restaurant. Otherwise, he would be punished. You should take a rest for now. Later, I will have manager's son read out the rules and regulations of the restaurant to you. You must firmly remember that if you commit the same mistake again in the future, I won't help you." "Yes, I'll go and rest." After hearing this, Chunhong walked out with a face full of unwillingness. At the same time, she also hated Zhouing. "Leave the rest to me." Sun Hongliang heaved a sigh of relief. "How could I? You were just doing what you needed to do. Since I've given you the power, you have to take responsibility. Otherwise, the restaurant will be in chaos." "Yes, I'll do my best. I believe you. Keep an eye on her in the afternoon, as I plan to go to the manor after I'm done." Zhouing then entered the kitchen. After finishing her work in the afternoon, she rushed back to the manor. When she arrived at the manor, she went straight to the chili field to look. Seeing that the plants were growing well, she was relieved. After that, she went to the dormitory area. She didn't expect that a row of brick houses had almost been finished building in less than 10 days, and the only thing missing was the roof. Uncle Yin, who had just come out of the sheepfold, saw her and immediately walked over with a smile. "Mistress, why are you here alone? I'm the only one who's free." "By the way," Zhouing asked, "when is the roof for these houses going to be done?" "I was just about to tell you about this. I heard from the contractor that the day after tomorrow, at noon, you too must come." "Sure, it's going to be a big day." "Well, definitely come. By the way, how's the manor lately?" Chapter 191 Drought? Pretty good, but it's a little dry. It's been half a year, and there's only been one small rain. We don't really have enough water. Uncle Yin shook his head. "The wheat has just been watered after the new year," he added. "I don't think it'll take more than 5 days to water them again." Zhouing was shocked after hearing this. She had yet to pay attention to this before, and it seemed that she had to make preparations in advance. For some reason, she suddenly thought of the nightmares she had while living in the Mother God's temple. Was it an early warning for her? At this moment, Uncle Yin said, "The year of the ox and horse was good for farming. I was afraid of the 2 years of the rooster and monkey and didn't expect that we would survive these 2 years but struggle in the year of the rat." After Zhouing heard this, she was stunned. She remembered that the year of the rat in the modern era wasn't good and took this hint seriously. After that, she chatted with the old man for a while and asked him to help keep an eye on the manor. Then, she turned around and went into the wheat field. The wheat had already turned green, but the seedlings weren't strong. The main issue was that the seedlings were sparse and even died in patches. Her expression immediately turned grave. After that, she turned around and went to the workshop. Zhouing found Chang Shun and asked, "Uncle Chang, I saw that the wheat is dying in small patches. What's going on?" "It's dry, and the water can't reach higher places. I was thinking of planting some green vegetables in the next 2 days, and maybe at least we will have something to harvest." When Chang Shun said this, he sighed and continued, "Mistress, there hasn't been a single drop of rain. The wheat can only be watered with water from the river, and I'm afraid it will wither after some more time. No matter what, we must keep some of this season's wheat even if we break our backs. Otherwise, what are we going to eat? Don't you think so?" "That's for sure. I just hope it rains soon." After saying that, Chang Shun looked up at the huge sun in the sky. Why didn't he notice how annoying the sun was before? Seeing this, Zhouing did not stay any longer. After greeting him goodbye, she went home and began to look for a water wheel drawing. If she could come up with the water wheel, the irrigation of the fields would save a lot of effort. In the evening, Gu Chungrui came back with Erzhuang. Seeing that there was no smoke coming from the kitchen, he paused for a moment before tying Erzhuang up and entering the house. He saw Zhouing standing in front of the dining table and studying a drawing carefully. He walked over curiously, looked, and was surprised to find a water wheel drawing. He immediately thought of the dry weather and suddenly understood her intentions. Gu Chungrui turned around and went to the kitchen. However, there was nothing in the kitchen except some rice and noodles. He had no choice but to come back and ask, "Babe, I'll get you some vegetables." Zhouing put down the drawing and said, "I'll go and cook while you study the drawing. Find fourth Grandpa Qian to try making one. If we don't think of a way to get the wheat fields in the manner to survive, I'm afraid we can't even keep the wheat seeds for next year." "All right, you can make something light for dinner. It's easy to get heaty now that the weather is dry." Gu Chungrui agreed, and he took the drawing to study it. After Zhouing went to the kitchen, she cooked a pot of green bean porridge, 5 steamed buns, and then mixed cold side dishes made of silver ears, celery, and crisp lotus roots. She also fried a portion of bacon and some winter bamboo shoots. After the meal, Gu Chungrui took the drawing and looked for the patriarch, and the two went looking for the village chief together. They knew this was a good thing. If it came to fruition, the entire village could plant rice easily. As a result, the three did not waste time and went straight to find the fourth Grandpa Qian. Fourth Grandpa Qian also understood the importance of this matter. Since the village chief was here especially, he selected 2 people to focus on making the water wheel. Chapter 192 fired on the morning of the 3rd day. After Zhouing had prepared the base and dipping sauce for the hot pot in the restaurant, she had bought half a pig and 100 pounds of rice. After that, she rented an ox cart and rushed to the manor. However, the two didn't step forward to get involved when the roof was lifted. The owners of the houses then came forward to receive the gifts she had prepared for them. After they were done with their work, everyone had a good meal together. After the meal, the couple rushed back to town. "Babe, should we buy another cart?" Gu Chungrui asked when they were about to part. "It's troublesome to keep depending on one donkey cart." "True, then I'll buy the most ordinary-looking one. I don't want to be targeted by others." "I understand. They'll get an advance from the clinic." After Gu Chungrui finished speaking, he turned around and returned to his clinic. While there was no one in the kitchen, Zhouing changed her phone and took it back to her room, where she looked through it carefully. As expected, when no one was around at noon, Chun Hong went to the kitchen. She wrapped a small amount of each seasoning and quietly exited the kitchen. Zhou Ying's eyes narrowed when she saw this. It seemed that Chun Hong was really here for the recipe. Unfortunately, she usually prepared the seasoning for the hot pot by herself and never put it in the kitchen. So no matter how much she took, she couldn't come up with the recipe for the hot pot base. However, she knew that Chun Hong couldn't stay anymore. Otherwise, who knew what she would do next? So, before work began in the afternoon, Zhouing took 100 coppers from the cabinet, called Chun Hong to the backyard, and handed it to her. "Chun Hong, I've realized that the work here isn't suitable for you. You'd better find another job. This is double the salary for the past few days. Consider it a small compensation from us." "Why? I've been doing a good job these days. I've been strictly following the restaurant's rules and regulations," Chun Hong said indignantly. "Then recite the 4th rule." Zhouing sneered. "You are not allowed to steal in the restaurant, and you must hand over a guest's belongings if you pick them up." After Chun Hong finished reciting, she was stunned for a moment as she thought of something, and her expression turned ugly. Zhouing said directly, "I think you already understand the reason. I don't need to say anything further, right? It'll be embarrassing if I continue." Chun Hong's face turned red after she heard that. Then, she puffed up her cheeks and glared at Zhouing angrily before turning around and running out. Seeing this, Zhouing shook her head and began getting busy. When she was almost done with her work, Gu Chungrui drove an unremarkable carriage to the main entrance. After Zhouing received the news, she immediately called De Hua over. As for Tianjiawang, he had to wait for Qianzhuang and the others before he could go back. After dinner, Gu Chungrui asked, "Did you fire Chunhong today?" "Yes. This afternoon, she stole some spices from the kitchen, so I fired her." Zhouing then asked curiously, "Have you found out who Sun Liang is?" She was sure Chunhong would contact the person who ordered her around if she was fired. Yes, Sun Liang is his current name. He used to be the manager of Dongxin Restaurant, Wang Quan. Wang Quan? Could it be the Qiao family? It's very likely. It seems like they're going to make a move, and we must be careful. I'm fine, but you have to be careful when you make a house visitation. Don't let anyone take advantage of that. Gu Chengrui nodded in agreement. I will be careful. The same goes for the restaurant. Haha, I've installed a camera in the kitchen. If anyone dares do anything, I'll not let them off. Gu Chengrui was stunned for a moment, and then he smiled. All right, but be careful. Don't let anyone find out. Otherwise, it'll be bad for you. Chapter 193. A chase. On the other hand, in a manor in the northern part of the town, Qiao Lanqing said after listening to Wang Quan's report, "That means they're vigilant. It's only been a few days, and they've already found out about the girl." Indeed, I thought that it would take some time and didn't expect them to react so quickly. They are more difficult to deal with than we thought. Did they find you out? I think they have. Some strangers have appeared outside the courtyard these past 2 days. They probably fired her after confirming my identity. All right, since we've already alerted them, let's move on to the second step. After Qiao Lanqing finished speaking, his eyes turned sharp, and he crushed the teacup in his hand. Young master, Wang Quan said hesitantly, are you sure this will alarm the third prince's forces here? If we are exposed first, we are doomed. The two are Zhou Weiming's saviors, and they get along well. Do you think Manager Liu would do nothing if something happened to them? As soon as he moves, we'll take them from the back. I don't believe that we can't find their nest. But the county mayor still has a garrison. Don't worry. I have my own arrangements. All right, I will make the arrangements then. Go, but remember not to go to that courtyard in the future. Also, try not to show your face again. I understand. Wang Quan answered and left for the lower room. The next day, Gu Chengrui was returning from the village when he saw 2 people approaching him in a hurry. Gu Chengrui was shocked to see their fierce faces. When did such people appear in a small town? Before he could think further, the 2 of them rushed over to Gu Chengrui. Gu Chengrui immediately realized that the 2 were coming for him. He immediately turned around and started running in a zigzag line. At the same time, he opened his first aid box and took out the knockout powder and the air gun hidden inside. He threw the knockout powder into the air and quickly pierced through the paper bag, scattering the powder around. However, the 2 men were smart. When they saw that something was wrong, they immediately separated. When Gu Chengrui saw this, he used the air gun to hit the arm of the person who was chasing him the closest. That person had been distracted for a moment because he dodged the knockout powder. During that split second of distraction, the steel bead hit his arm. He grimaced in pain, and the other man was shocked by this. None of them had expected that he had not only hidden medicine but also hidden weapons. For a moment, they didn't dare act rashly and wanted to see what he was up to. Seeing this, Gu Chengrui grinned and took the opportunity to replace the steel balls in the gun with 2 anesthetic needles. However, he didn't shoot at them when they were on full alert. Instead, he turned around and ran into the mountains. If he could, he wanted to kill them in the mountains. When the 2 of them saw him enter the mountain, they looked at each other and immediately gave chase. Otherwise, if he ran away, they would not be able to report back, and their companions would also laugh at them. They did not expect that Gu Chengrui, a scholar, could tear through the mountainous terrain like a monkey. He was running faster than they could, and soon his figure disappeared. Damn, we got outdated info. Who said that he was just a doctor with some skills? His endurance and speed are better than ours. One of them held onto a tree and exclaimed while panting, "We've indeed underestimated our enemy. If we had known, we would have waited until we got closer before making our move." The other replied in frustration. As soon as he finished speaking, he froze for a moment before falling to the ground. Chapter 194, Turning the Tables. The other man was shocked, and just as he was about to go forward to check, he suddenly felt a sting on his back. He then quickly fell over on top of the other man. Gu Chungrui brushed away the loose grass on his head and climbed out of a bush. He stepped forward and retrieved the two needles, searched their bodies, and found 5 taels of silver and a banknote worth 90 taels of silver with 2 daggers. However, he did not find anything that could prove their identity. This was fine, and he could now take everything for himself. After packing up, he sat on the side and thought about how to deal with them. Ultimately, he used their daggers and stabbed each of their thighs, relieved to see they didn't wake up. As for whether they would bleed to death or be eaten by wild beasts, it was none of his business. As he descended the mountain, he was relieved that there was no hocus-pocus or fantastical martial arts in this world. Otherwise, he knew he wouldn't be able to escape death today. Now, he was just curious as to who sent these 2 men. After much thought, he could pin it on Qiao launching of the Qiao family. It seemed like he had to alert his wife as soon as possible. At the thought of this, he quickened his pace. He did not know that he had not walked far when 2 more people came out of hiding. These 2 weren't as kind as Gu Chungrui, as they dragged the 2 attackers into the mountains and fed them to the wolves. It was almost dark when Gu Chungrui returned to his clinic. After keeping his earnings there, he drove his cart to the restaurant. Since Qin Zhuang and the others were also there, they went home together. After they arrived home and finished dinner, Gu Chungrui told Zhouing about the assassination attempt. "Babe, don't go out alone anymore. Remember to prepare something for self-defense, too. You're not hurt, are you?" Zhouing looked at him and asked. "No, I didn't let them get close to me." Gu Chungrui reassured her. "Remember, don't go out alone in the future. I know, but I'm mainly worried about you. If worst comes to worst on my end, we'll just bring them into my inner space and kill them. All right, but you have to be careful when using your inner space. Otherwise, it'll be troublesome if you're discovered." After that, the couple cleaned up, and Gu Chungrui had to attend to 3 more patients. The 2 entered the inner space as night fell, preparing their self-defense items, and then got busy. Manager Liu also found out about Gu Shengrui's incident through 2 of his men. He sighed and said, "I foresee it's going to get worse. You 2 must protect their safety. However, if they can handle it, just do what you did today and help them clean up." Of course, it'd be best to find out the enemy's hiding place. Remember, you must be extremely careful and not chase after a cornered enemy. "We understand, Uncle Liu. We'll take our leave then." The 2 of them nodded solemnly. "All right, go down and take 2 taels of silver as your reward." Manager Liu nodded. After that, he went out to look for Sun Hongliang and instructed, "The snakes are starting to come out of their holes. You must be careful over there and, at the same time, protect their safety." "I understand." Sun Hongliang, his nephew, replied respectfully. "Okay. Also, do a good job fortifying the restaurant's defenses. Don't let them be framed for anything. If that happens, we'll be in a tough spot." "All right." Sun Hongliang then asked in confusion, "Uncle, why don't you just reveal my identity? This way, not only can we better protect them, but we can also save a lot of trouble." Chapter 195, Revelation. If we were to be direct with them, would they still accept you? Manager Liu replied in a miffed tone. "I don't think it's a big deal. Besides, If they had their guard up against us, they wouldn't have accepted me back then. Moreover, according to my observation, honesty and loyalty were the most important things for the husband and wife. They don't have many other concerns. If we continue to hide it like this, it'll be hard to explain if they find out about my identity down the road. Now is the best time to come clean, and this is an opportunity we shouldn't let pass. Manager Lu nodded thoughtfully and replied, "I'll report this to General Zhou and see what he thinks." Afterward, he went to a small courtyard, wrote a note, and sent it out with a pigeon. Over the next 2 days, Zhou Ying and Gu Chengrui didn't go out alone. Everything was normal. At the same time, Manager Lu also received General Zhou's reply, telling him to do as he saw fit. The uncle and nephew discussed and decided to reveal their positions to avoid any misunderstandings in the future. So, during lunch break, Sun Hongliang went to Zhou Ying in the front lobby, whispered his identity as their shadow guard, and bowed deeply. "I've let down your trust. Please punish me." Zhou Ying just smiled. To be honest, when Manager Lu brought him here, she already knew that he was someone from General Zhou's or the Third Prince's side. Therefore, she wasn't too surprised to hear him reveal his identity. But she didn't expect him to be a shadow guard. She looked at him curiously and asked, "So what you're saying is that you're quite skilled?" Sun Hongliang was stunned for a moment and then nodded. "I'm mainly trained in how to run a business as a manager. However, it shouldn't be a problem for me to deal with a few men." "Wow, I really couldn't tell from your scholarly appearance. You're not angry? Why should I be angry? Isn't it fine as long as we cooperate happily? Besides, you're here to protect us. We'll feel much more at ease with you here, so please take care of us in the future." Zhou Ying replied with a smile. "Thank you for your trust, mistress." Sun Hongliang smiled and bowed. "Do a good job, and I'll give you 5% of our profits as a bonus at the end of the year." Zhou Ying promised. She then turned around and went to the back to take a rest. As for his identity, she couldn't care less as long as he didn't threaten their safety. She would have to be more cautious in the future when removing items from her inner space. Otherwise, it would be troublesome if he found something weird and reported it. That night, Zhou Ying told Gu Chengrui about Sun Hongliang, and he didn't have much reaction either. From the moment they saved Zhou Huaiming, they knew they were on the Third Prince's side. Instead, he said, "In that case, you don't have to worry about your business and just have to take hold of the overall situation. Also, ask him to help bring over 1 or 2 more managers. In this way, if he leaves or we open another branch, we will have someone to help." True. It's a waste not to use a talent delivered to our doorstep. I'll use him appropriately. Zhou Ying nodded in agreement. She had to train a few more chefs as she didn't want to waste more time in the back kitchen. Not only was it tedious, but it was also bad for her skin. Gu Chengrui smiled and reminded her, "Try not to take things from your inner space to the restaurant. If you really are short of something, ask the workshop to increase their production." "I know." Zhou Ying nodded in agreement. "This year's situation isn't going to be good," he added. "Do you think we should take advantage of the fact that the price of food hasn't increased yet and no one is watching us? We could take some grains out of your inner space and store them in the warehouse, just in case." Chapter 196. Panicking due to concern. Sure. Weren't you going to transport soybeans and green beans here anyway? Mix the grains in with them, but don't put too much, or it'll be hard to explain. Gu Chengrui said after a moment of hesitation. "All right." On the other end, Manager Lu found out from Sun Hongliang that not only were Zhou Ying and Gu Chengrui not angry but were pleased, further placing him in an important position. He felt a little ashamed of his narrow-mindedness. Meanwhile, Wang Quan, who had been waiting for his good news, was in a terrible mood. Not only did the people he sent out not return, but they were nowhere to be seen. Gu Chengrui was completely fine, still alive and kicking. Therefore, after cursing for a while, he sent more people out. However, because the 2 men sent out this time were unclear about what happened to their predecessor, they did not keep an eye on Gu Chengrui but instead went to Zhou Ying. After 2 days, they found that Zhou Ying's life was routine, and someone was always accompanying her. She never went at any remote places, which meant they had no chance to do anything. Therefore, they could only think of a way to lure her out. One day, they took advantage of Gu Shengruis out for a patient visit and disguised themselves as villagers. They rushed into Grassland Taste Restaurant and found Sun Hongliang asking in a panicked tone, "Do you have a manager called Zhou Ying here?" "You're?" Sun Hongliang asked as he looked up at him. "Oh, I'm from Huan Village. Dr. Gu was being hunted down on his way to our village. Fortunately, he was saved by our villagers, but he was seriously injured. He instructed me to come over and tell you to call for a doctor and drive a cart to pick him up." Sun Hongliang was shocked when he heard that. After that, he didn't think much about it and went to find Zhou Ying to tell her about it. Zhou Ying's mind went blank when she heard that. After returning to her senses, she quickly called Fang Qing and said, "Hurry up and get a cart. Well, bring Dr. Luo," and set off immediately. "Okay, don't worry. Since Dr. Gu can still send someone over, he should be fine." Fang Qing immediately took off his apron. The two got on a carriage, picked up Dr. Luo, and rushed to Huan Village. Sun Hongliang waited for them to leave. When he returned, he found the villages had disappeared and felt a little strange. Even if the other party didn't ask for anything in return, they should at least head back together and show them the way. He thought about it and suddenly came to a realization. Oh no, if Gu Chungrui was awake and alive, he was a doctor, so how could he not be able to treat his wounds? Or he could have also asked someone to send him back. This meant, thinking of this, Sun Hongliang broke out in a cold sweat. He gave Guwen a few instructions and ran to the clinic. However, he was still a step too late. They had already set off. He had no choice but to run and try to catch up to them. Sun Hongliang didn't see that a man wearing a bamboo hat among the pedestrians had quietly followed after him when he saw him running. Because Fang Ding didn't drive the cart too fast on the streets, Sun Hongliang managed to catch up to the carriage, and they were already out of town. Before he could say anything, a small stone suddenly flew from behind and hit the horse's butt. The horse was startled and immediately galloped away. Fang Qing jumped in shock and quickly steadied the carriage. Sun Hongliang turned his head and looked in the direction of the stone. He noticed a man who resembled the villager who had reported about Gu Shengrui's situation. The person turned around and returned to town. Sun Hongliang saw that it was impossible to catch up to the carriage, so he turned back and looked for the man. But the man was already gone. Remembering that Zhou Ying had someone protecting her, he didn't do anything unnecessary. Instead, he returned to the restaurant. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.